Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by Drew. And man, it's good to have you back, man. I can't sip a beer while I'm talking at the same time.
Dude, why not?
It's the old dilemma. We talked about this before the show. Even the ventriloquists are not really drinking.
Yes, they are.
Maybe. I don't know.
Have you ever been one?
Well, I've been a dummy my whole life, but I've never been the guy controlling it. Still, good to have you back, man. Always more fun to talk sports with the more people we got. We're also glad all of you are here. Today, we got a lot to talk about. We have all these college rankings coming up. We have, also on top of it, we were going to talk Tom Brady. I think he might get pushed a little bit later on. Surprise, he's still a Patriot. Surprise to no one since they booted Jimmy G out of there. We're also talking Chiefs 2019. I bet you can't wait to hear what Drew has to say about that. I know I can't. We're going to be getting into all that, man. Is there anything that you're incredibly excited to talk about? What's number one on the list? And I guess we're back. I think Facebook crashed on us. I have no idea. Honestly, what happened? Nothing decided it wanted to work. I think Facebook might have crashed on us. We are glad you're back. If you're back. Honestly, Ian, I know you were in there. Ron as well. Terrible luck. I just wasted my great joke of being a dummy my whole life, man. Do you believe that?
No.
That took hours of preparation before the show.
It's actually been a lifetime.
Wasted.
Of preparation.
That was it. That was the best joke I was ever going to tell.
Can
and now
I,
it's
can
out
I
the
say
window.
my joke now?
No, you can't. Your joke's off limits. All right. Anyway, we're going to start again from scratch. Obviously, we didn't get too far into it the first time, but now we are back, and we have some college football to talk about. We also have the Chiefs in 2019 to talk about. Not sure. Hopefully, everything stays kosher this time. I'm not 100% sure what happened, but I've got the feeling it was on the Facebook side of things.
We can only hope.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Ian. Too bad you can't watch, man. We're going to miss you. I know you'd love to rip apart Drew's Chiefs, but hey, there's always next time. No worries about that. We'll start by talking college
Ian
football.
won't do that to me.
Oh, he would. And he should. I can't wait to do it myself. We're going to start by talking college football, though. We can't talk Chiefs the whole episode. We're going to start with some of the college game. We're going to go through the top 10 of the coaches' preseason poll that was released here. Honestly, there's some names up there, not really surprised. Some of them I thought were a little too high, though. I want to go into that. I want to talk about where they were, where they should be, a little bit more on those lines. We're going to start from the top, going down to the bottom, because I think when you talk about the top of college football, man, obviously Clemson's the number one, right?
Right.
I know there may be some Alabama fans out there, but even a lot of Alabama fans I'm talking to are still saying, yeah, I mean, they beat us pretty soundly in the national championship. They are the number one team.
Right, and to be honest with you, as much as I love football, as much as I love college football, I got a serious question for you.
Sure.
Does it really matter after two?
After two what?
After 1 and 2, does it really matter?
Well, in years past, no. But this year, I still believe there are some teams that
You
can go out
believe
there
there's
and win.
teams that
Yes.
can beat one of these teams up there at the top?
Yeah, would you like me to tell you why? Georgia has been the team that has pushed Alabama the farthest in years past. I mean, the past couple of years, Kirby Smart has been the closest guy in the SEC to dethroning Alabama. Yeah. I think they could do it. They have Jake Fromm as a senior. They have their running back. I'm sorry, I don't think he's a senior, but it's likely he's going to leave here. DeAndre Swift, also likely to leave. Their running back. They have guys who are now at the apex of their college career. Where we're going to see the best of them. This is probably their last chance to do it.
Yeah.
I think they have a chance of upsetting Alabama this year. Again, they've been the closest one to do it. LSU, still in that arena. Do I think they have what it takes? No. I still think Alabama's a step ahead of them, unless they have a major injury. Maybe something happens to Tua. I think Alabama's probably going to cruise onto it. Yeah. As for Clemson, I think they're susceptible too. Do I think they still are going to win the ACC? I do. But obviously, something happens to Trevor Lawrence. All that goes out the window, even if Trevor Lawrence plays. And Trevor Lawrence stays healthy. They have to replace those 4 great defensive linemen. There's a good chance that defense is nowhere near as stout as it was. This is the team that held Notre Dame to 3 points in a bowl game.
Right.
This is the team that held Alabama, 44-14?
Yeah.
They're going to be missing those big 4 guys because each and every one of them, 3 of them I think went in the first 2 rounds, and then they had a 4th guy go afterward. I mean, when you're talking about Dexter Lawrence, Cleveland Farrell, they have some huge names they have to replace. So yeah, it does matter after 1 and 2. I really do believe that.
Martavius says that Fromm is a junior.
He is. Thank you. Like I said, I misspoke when I said senior, but the odds of Jake Fromm sticking around, we've seen Justin Herbert do it for Oregon. It happens.
Yeah.
Do I think it happens here? Well, there's a lot of quarterbacks. I'll say that. If you're a Georgia fan and you want Jake Fromm to stick around, there are going to be a lot of higher tier quarterbacks that we saw in last year's draft in this year's draft. So maybe Jake Fromm says, I don't like my chances with Herbert out there. Maybe Tua's out there. We've got maybe Jalen Hurts has a great year and he decides he wants to go out for Oklahoma. Maybe he sticks around in Georgia for another year because he doesn't like the quarterback class. Other than that, I mean, if they have a good year in Georgia like everyone expects them to, why wouldn't you go if you're going to be a first-round quarterback?
Yeah. And to be honest, it seems like you have a decent college, 1 year, you can get the first round in the NFL draft.
Exactly. And Jake Fromm's been good for 2 years now.
For 2 years. Exactly. That's my point.
Exactly. Yeah. But we have seen those guys take steps back, too. There's
right.
a chance that maybe Georgia doesn't have the year they want him to have. Maybe he has a little bit of an injury. Maybe he's slowed down a little bit. Maybe missing Riley Ridley is going to be the difference here. There are still weaknesses, or are still opportunities, I should say, for Georgia to keep him. There are still points in his game that he could probably develop by sticking around as a senior. But that's a lot of money to turn down, man. That is a ton of money to turn down as a 21, 22-year-old kid.
Right.
Sometimes you just got to take the money and run. If you're going to be a first-round pick, does it matter if you go 15 or whether you go 5? You probably go to a better team at 15. Yeah, so I guess it does. You probably want to go 28.
I was like, I don't know, man. But I guess that's why the college poll has them right there at number 3. The one team that you said that could possibly upset number 1 and number 2, Clemson and Alabama.
And this might be the last best shot Kirby Smart's going to have to beat him. I mean, again, there's always that unsure nature of things when you lose your quarterback and you lose one of your best playmakers. Even though Georgia churns out these running backs. I mean, Nick Chubb, you want to talk about Todd Gurley before that. They've had so many great running backs at Georgia. It's hard to believe you're going to run out or have a year where you don't have that elite guy. I think DeAndre Swift might be the next elite running back to come out of Georgia. And just like Fromm, you're coming up at the end of this end of his college career, and he has the pros dangled out in front of him, and you can go make a lot of money. Why would you not?
I mean, I would. Kenny says, hey, what's up? Glad you could join us, man. He said, oh, yeah, we are Penn State.
They got the snub a little bit. They're all the way down at 13. At 14, I should say. I think Oregon's 13, Penn State's 14. I didn't write them down. They're outside the top 10. We're only talking top 10 today, but I think Penn State is one of those teams that's on the rise, maybe a little undervalued with as much as they did last year, and even the year before that when they had Saquon Barkley. I think James Franklin, as a head coach, is one of the best in the game. I think when you look at what he did at Vanderbilt, a historically terrible football school, made them relevant, won them 8 or 9 games for a couple years. Now he's got Penn State on the track. He is a great college coach. The question is, can he match up with schools that recruit better than Penn State, like Ohio State, like Florida State in the past, like Clemson, like Alabama? It's going to be interesting to see. But even though they lost their quarterback and running back last year, I think this is one of those teams that still has the opportunity to make an impact in 2019 and potentially be one of those dark horses to make the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt about it. James, we're glad you're back in here, man. He says, do you all think Tom Brady is staying for 4 more years?
Well, what is he, 42? He said 45. I think that was the deal, right, Tom? You got to leave after 3. I think it's potentially he doesn't take any hits. And if you don't take any hits, as long as the arm keeps its strength, why does it matter, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm distracted by my daughter.
That's all right. If I'm Tom Brady, I'm sticking around.
Yeah.
Why get off the gravy train? You're winning championships. You're relevant every year. They're protecting you. They've got running backs. And throw me a couple receivers, and it's the perfect scenario for a quarterback.
Yeah, and they're changing the offense to allow the run game to really take over. It allows an older quarterback to kind of stay healthy, not taking hits. It's pretty ideal as long as he wants to play.
Absolutely. Let's go back to college real quick. I do want to talk about Alabama. Even though they got 6 votes to be the first team on this poll, Clemson got 59. There is a huge gap between these two, and I think a lot of that comes down to the bowl game. I mean, obviously, when you blow them out 44-14, it was one game, though. Are we putting too much weight on Clemson winning that one game against Alabama? Or do you think that is a good representation of the gap between these two teams?
I don't know. The gap might be inflated a little bit. Maybe Clemson had more to prove in the bowl game than Alabama did. But go ahead.
And Bobby says he thought that was his kid, so good to know you guys could hear that too. I was kind of playing it off like, I don't know if they hear it, but they hear it.
We hear it, yeah. There's no doubt. But I do think that gap is inflated a little bit. Like I said, I think Clemson wanted that game more than Alabama did, as funny as that sounds. But at the same time, I don't think the gap is significantly that much smaller. You got to think about that's it. That's the game. That's the championship. That's when all your cards are on the table. You're full blown go, and they got stomped.
I think a lot of it's mentality, too. They were Alabama going into it saying, man, we're the big dog. We got this. Everyone else needs to be underdog. We're talking about, Clemson had the better year on paper, and a lot of people were picking Clemson to win it. I think when you look at Alabama and the way that they've played in years past, now that they're the underdog, this might be the year that they just come out and stomp everybody. I know I talked about Georgia maybe upsetting them this year, but this might be the motivation that Nick Saban's been needing. And Nick Saban's already the motivated guy, right? He's the guy that's always hard on him. He's the Bill Belichick of the college game. He's always hard on the players. They're basically the Patriots of the college game. Yeah. Now they're motivated on top of it, extra motivated. This is going to be an Alabama team that might be the best that we've seen. They still have some questions. They got to replace Quinnen Williams, which was a surprise last year when they had to replace those other D tackles, Jonathan Allen before him.
Rashad Payne.
Exactly. And Payne on top of it. I think when you look at what Alabama has done, and someone's going to step up. We're going to have that next big, great defensive player in the middle of this line somewhere, and they're not going to miss a beat. It's just happens so often. There's going to be a lot of the teams you're like, well, they're changing stuff. Things might happen. Alabama has consistently been a very good defense as long as Nick Saban's been there.
Yeah, as long as the recruiting class stays at the top, I don't think they're going to have a problem interchanging these pieces as they go into the NFL. Actually, I think it's more on the side of the offense. I know we got Tua still there, but you lost like Josh Jacobs. You lost some other pieces on that offense. I think that's where this team might be lacking going into this season.
They could be. I mean, it's definitely potentially there, but when you have the quarterback in the college game, like you said, they have a bunch of recruits. Maybe it's the freshman who steps up. Maybe it's the sophomore. And Alabama historically doesn't do that. They don't lean on the younger players. Usually you sit for a couple years. Then the young guys get their turn when they're juniors and seniors, play for a year or two, and move on to the NFL. I think this year might be where they have to step in and try to get a few more playmakers on this team to help Tua. You've got the quarterback in place. I think they need a couple more playmakers to get that step up. We saw Josh Jacobs kind of come out of nowhere. He really only had 1 year's worth of production, 1 year's worth of decent production, and he was still a committee member.
Yeah.
I mean, he only had like a third of the NFL's carries. There were times we were talking about it. This guy's going to be a first-round pick, and he's getting 33% of the touches out of the backfield.
Right.
So they still have guys. I think they'll be okay on offense, but you're right. It is something to watch going forward. Let's talk about number 4 on the list, Oklahoma. To me, I think this is where we first are with our overrated teams. I think Kyler Murray was a lot of what made this Oklahoma team great. I think Hollywood Brown, another one of the guys that made this team great. When you look at it, they are just one of those teams that with Jalen Hurts, who's not as good of a thrower as Kyler Murray was, might take a step back. They'll still be successful. It's still Big 12 football. You're still going to see a lot of points on the board. I still think they have one of the better defenses in the conference. But it's not going to be the same. You can't tell me going from Kyler Murray to Jalen Hurts, who struggled to throw the ball pretty much at all in Alabama and got replaced by Tua Tagovailoa. You can't tell me that there's not going to be some drop-off there. I don't think they're going to be...
I think there is, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be as good, and I think we're overrating them because we like Lincoln Riley. And Lincoln Riley is one of the best offensive minds in football right now.
But one thing that Oklahoma always produces, and that's a great offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to never really struggle. They seem to always have big bodies in front of these quarterbacks. And, it is a change of offense for Hurts. So do you not think that there might be an increase in stats on his side alone? I mean, realistically...
That's one of the big rollovers. I mean, you're talking about they always produce an offensive line. They lost 4 offensive linemen to the draft last year, Drew.
I mean, this is the first time they've done that before in the past.
I understand. But anytime you have that uncertainty, you can always say, yes, they've turned out offensive line. Well, what if you got a bad tackle? And all of a sudden, you're weak on one side of the football because you can't make up for that. They have a lot of things changing on this offense. You have a quarterback change. You have your best receiver gone in Hollywood Brown. You have 4 offensive linemen rolling over. Even though I love Lincoln Riley's system, I think he's one of the most creative and best guys that runs more of a spread offense that you see out of the Big 12, more of a high-flying offense. I think with all this change, we do have them overrated at number 4. There are other teams that probably could be moving up, like Ohio State, like LSU. I'm sorry, not Ohio State, like LSU. Even teams like Florida and Notre Dame probably could be higher up than Oklahoma is because of all this rollover. I get it. They made the playoff last year. And if you look, 3 out of the 4 teams are at the top 4 because they made the playoff last year. Right. But just because they told Notre Dame they're not good enough to be there, they need to tell that to Oklahoma. I don't think they're quite there when you talk about all these subtractions. The biggest one being Kyler Murray.
I mean, it's got to be the coaching. It's got to be the coaching that puts them above. We both thought Lincoln Riley was going to the NFL last year.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, during this offseason. We both thought that. We thought for sure he was gone. But he's still there. It's kind of like Saban in a sense. It's that team's going to stay good until he decides to go on.
I totally agree with you. I think as long as he's there, the offense will look okay. But you can't, especially in the Big 12, and the way the Oklahoma defense was last year, it's all on the offense. You need to have high-level production. You need to be a top-5 offense if you're going to win the national championship. And I just don't know with Jalen Hurts that happens. They don't throw well. He doesn't throw well enough. And that's what it boils down to. Even in the college game where you can get away with a running quarterback, you're going to have to throw at some point. And I just don't know that Jalen Hurts is the guy. It's a decent replacement because he's got the experience having started at Alabama.
He's a winning
quarterback. He's an upperclassman, so he's been around.
Yeah.
But I look at things, Drew, and I'm like, okay, you still got to throw the ball at some point.
Right.
Even in today's college football game, you can't just run all the time and be successful. It just doesn't happen.
What's going on, Frank? Glad you could join us. Don't worry about being late, man.
Absolutely. I want to talk about Ohio State next. Again, I also think they're a little highly rated, overrated simply for the fact because they have the changeover at offense. Dwayne Haskins is gone, just like I said with Oklahoma. You're now missing your quarterback. The difference here, well, I guess I shouldn't say the difference. Both of these teams have done a great job replacing their quarterbacks in years past. Does that continue? And now it's not Urban Meyer. At the very least, Oklahoma's keeping Lincoln Riley, and that seems to be the driving force in college football. Is what kind of head coach do you have?
Right.
I think when you look at it, now you've got Ryan Day taking over at Ohio State. There are question marks as to what this team is going to look like. I know he coached for 3 games last year, and they blew out people who didn't deserve to be playing Ohio State. TCU was the best team that was ranked when they played them, wound up not being a non-factor through the rest of the season. I think they won 6 or 7 games. Yeah, so they beat the teams that they should have beaten. After that, they kind of struggled with a lot of these teams. Even with Urban Meyer, there were games that they should have been blowing these guys out. I mean, they barely survived Penn State. I'm not saying they should have blown Penn State out, but they should have beaten Penn State more handily than they did if you want to be the Big Ten champion. They beat Minnesota 30-14. They got absolutely destroyed by Purdue. It was their only loss of the season, but they got blown out by a not special team in Purdue. They barely survived Nebraska 36-31. 52-51 to a team like Maryland. You let the Maryland Terps score 51 points on you? They've got questions, and now their head coach is gone.
Right. No, you're right. And I think, and this is a point that I wanted to wait until the end, but I think I got to put it now. I think this is the team that you see completely drop off the top 25. I think they are going to struggle. I think this is going to be the first year. I think it's going to take them a year to kind of rebound. This might be a year where you see Ohio State end out of the top 25 in college football.
That would be a shock. I know Michigan fans would love to hear that. They've been waiting to get over the hump and beat them for years.
There's usually one team that does it.
Right.
And why wouldn't it be them? They're the one that took, out of all these losses that you're talking about, like Clemson, their defensive line, right. Alabama and Quinnen Williams.
All these teams still have their head coaches.
Exactly. The one that took
the driving
biggest
force
thing.
In college.
Exactly.
Yes.
Urban Meyer is gone, retired. Ohio State is where you're going to...
Tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be back. He'll get a sweetheart job. He'll be back.
Ohio State is where you're going to see a huge drop-off. At number 5, I think it's almost just like we know there's a big fan base of that, and they don't want to upset them just
But these are coaches. Again, and it's anonymous.
It's still money driving this force.
I totally agree with you there. The other thing, on the defensive side, they're losing guys like Draymond Jones and Nick Bosa. I know every Ohio State fan's going to tell me that Nick Bosa only played for 3 games. Well, don't worry about that because he didn't play the entire season. That's still a significant loss because that's a guy that still was one of the driving factors on the defense. I know he left the program. You're still going to miss those guys in the defensive line.
Yeah. Frank says Big Ten is tough on each other. No doubt about it.
Have you seen the SEC? You want to talk about tough on each other. But you're right. The Michigan beats up on Ohio State, or I should say Ohio State beats up on Michigan, having won 14 of 15. And then you see teams like Sparty in the mix. You still can't lose to Purdue.
Just get off the SEC bandwagon, dude.
I'm not even an SEC bandwagoner. It's just the truth. This conference has the best teams, and they beat each other up.
I wanted to use dick, but I decided to be nice and give you bandwagon. Get off of it, okay?
No.
There's other conferences out there.
There are, and they have like 2 or 3 good teams, and then those teams cruise out of the playoffs because one of them has a good year. We'll talk about that later. I think the SEC, again, it's still the conference to beat. When you talk about the depth, but it's being closed. It's the gap is closing between them. Again, I don't have any dog in this fight. I don't even have a college football team I root for. I just love watching it. I think when you look at things, conferences like the Big Ten, the Big 12, maybe even the ACC, if they can get a couple if Florida State can rebound and they have Clemson, are closing the gap against the SEC. But they're still the best conference, top to bottom, in college football.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I'm going to take a moment just to tell you guys, remember to like and share. And obviously, you guys comment greatly on this. It means the world to us. We try to beat Facebook algorithm. there's so much math involved. The more you guys get involved with this show, the better we do, and we really appreciate all the love you guys show us.
Absolutely. Every share, every like, every comment helps us out, guys. We appreciate you. We'll keep going, though, if you're ready. We'll go into number 6, LSU. I think that's a decent spot for LSU. To me, they're like the 6th best team in the nation. And again, this goes to the SEC, right? You've got 3 of the top 6. I think the ACC and conferences like the Big Ten, while they are gaining ground, still have to have a couple teams that have a potential to win the division. If you're going to talk about it. I mean, you got Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State out of the Big Ten. Okay, Penn State's a legitimate threat. Michigan has never really seemed to find its legs when they're playing Ohio State, losing 14 of 15, and Harbaugh's like, 0 for 8 or 0 for 9 against Ohio State? It's been a long time since they beat them. Right now, you've got the big dog in the Big Ten. You've got Clemson, that's the big dog in the ACC. If you want to tell me that division's that good, show me some threats. Because even Alabama, they go and play Georgia, and they get scared. I mean, they go and play LSU, they get scared. They play all these tough teams, especially in the SEC West, and it's always close.
Wisconsin.
Okay, Wisconsin wasn't good last year, were they?
Iowa
wasn't that great either.
Wait, hold on. Pump your brakes there. They were good.
The difference is having a one-off year, like a lot of these teams do. In Wisconsin, I'm not saying they have a one-off year. They usually run the ball well. We've seen good running backs come out of there. They play some good defense, but you can't tell me that that's an elite team. You're never like, watch out for Wisconsin to win the national championship this year. Everyone says Florida, LSU, Georgia, Alabama. These are teams that can win the national championship year in and year out. And if Alabama wasn't in the SEC, you would see teams like LSU, Florida, and Georgia in the championship all the time. It's just, again, they have the big dog in Alabama, and then they have the runners-up who are just as dangerous or almost as dangerous right behind them. I think that's what the other conferences are missing. Kentucky was ranked this year. Kentucky was like number 9 this year. The SEC is tough.
Oh, man.
Kentucky!
Is there a way to fix the system?
No, I mean, not so long as they're still recruiting and everyone has free choice to go wherever they want. There's no way to, and that's the way it should be.
And they get the South.
If you're not going to pay them, well, that's just where the good programs are.
No. Weather makes a huge difference for these young guys.
Weather is big. The money that is spent on these programs is absolutely huge. And if you look at it, I think the SEC is like they have 8 of the top 15 spending programs in college football. You want to go where the gym's nice. You want to go where the workout room is nice, where they have all the extra technology.
Where it's warm.
Where you're going to develop into an NFL player. That's what you want, right?
Not all the best players come from there.
No, not all the best players do. In fact, a lot of SEC guys flame out when they get to the NFL.
Yep.
Just because you go to the SEC doesn't mean it. But when you're a high schooler and you're looking at all those nice gyms and you're looking at all the nice equipment they have in the SEC, you want to go there.
Frank says, who says Florida?
Apparently the coaches do. They have them ranked 8th.
Let's talk about them. Or we...
I don't want to skip Michigan. I know there's some big Blue fans out there. We'll talk Michigan real quick, and then we'll talk Florida. Again, Florida has been one of those teams that hasn't had an elite defense. They haven't put it together on offense. They have been, and going back to the Tebow days, they won national championships with Tebow. LSU won national championships. You've seen, what has it been, 15 years straight, or 15 out of 16, that you had an SEC team in the college football final, regardless of the change of rules?
Right.
I mean, they went to the playoff, and you see an SEC team there. I get it, it's Alabama more often than not. Even before that, when you were just picking 2 teams to play each other, there was almost always an SEC team there. More than that, Frank, there were SEC teams that played each other in an entire SEC championship. I mean... or in a national championship of entire SEC teams. We've never seen that with anyone else. We've never seen another conference have 2 teams that are so good that the college football board said, we need to put both of these teams in the national championship.
Not in the recent years. Yeah, not in the recent years.
Right.
Not.
So when you look at it, man, you got to sit there and say, the SEC is still the deepest conference. It just is. Does that mean they're the best? No. I mean, they might, again, Clemson blew everyone out of the water last year. They may not have the top-end team, but when you talk about the best conference through and through,
John says, is the guy on the right old enough to go to the bar?
You want to check my ID, officer? That's all I can say. Moving forward here, I do want to talk Michigan.
He's talking about you.
I'm on the right when you look at that perspective. Right. You're on my right.
So hold on, am I old,
it's
John?
It's flipped. You missed it. You're saying I look too young.
No, I know.
It's because I keep it clean shaved. I can't help it. We don't need all that peach fuzz making me look like I'm 22 instead of 19. Doesn't matter. We'll talk about Michigan next. I want to talk about Michigan being up there again. They have
Thank
some
you for
questions.
the comment, John.
Absolutely. They have some big name losses on the defense. Devin Bush is gone. Rashawn Gary's gone. They have some of their own questions. This is where the Big Ten needs to finally show that they can have somebody not named Ohio State make it to the top of their conference. I mean,
I can tell you right now, if Michigan does not end, not saying they win a championship, if they don't end above Ohio State, Harbaugh's gone.
you think so?
Yeah. You lose Urban Meyer, and you still let him.
He's come close. He's been like 2 years ago when they had the overtime play where the guy clearly stretched the ball over the first down line, and they gave it to Ohio State, and they said he was short on a fourth down. He's been like as close as you can come without winning a game. I don't think Harbaugh's on the hot seat. I don't. I mean, when you look at what he took over at Michigan when they were winning 2 games a year, and then now all of a sudden they're back to 9-10 wins every year, I think they're going to be more patient with him. I do. And if Harbaugh could ever figure out his offense and get a consistent offense out there to go with this defense, they'd beat him. They could. They would be one of the best college football teams out there if they could just get an offense to play with this defense. They're kind of like Florida in that regard. Great defense, doesn't do anything if you can't score points.
Right. What's going on, Sean? I'm glad you could join us, man. He said the New York Yankees beat Boston Red Sox in the Yankee Stadium last night. Yes, they did. The Red Sox are in trouble, man, dropping 8 games in the loss column, the longest stretch in a while. They're going to be facing the Kansas City Royals, I believe, tonight, and they have beat them.
Time to bounce back.
They beat them the last 9 or 8 games, so more than likely Boston's going to find themselves a win. But man, David Price and Chris Sale, they need to get their pitching together.
Yep, I agree. We'll move forward here really quick because we do need to still talk Chiefs here. I want to talk about Florida really quick. Again, they went from 4-7 to 10-3 under Dan Mullins. Obviously, he's one of the up-and-coming coaches in college football. We saw a lot of him out of Mississippi State, I believe, beforehand.
I think so.
He's one of those guys that when you look at what he can bring to an organization, I don't want to bet on Florida just yet. But what we saw is what you want to see out of a program moving from 4 to 10 wins in the SEC. They have almost what it takes. The only downside, they kept 5 of their offensive players. That's a lot of turnover, especially for a unit that was much improved off of recent years. If you don't replenish that, those 10 wins could drop to 7 in the SEC really easily.
Yeah, they lost their big tackle in Jamal. I can't remember. Why am I blanking on his name? It's Jamal, the tackle out of Florida that the Jags picked up. Taylor? No. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks for the help.
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. They lost Ja'Kai Polite, defensive end.
Yeah, but they lost their tackle, too.
Oh, you're talking about the offensive tackle. It is.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I was thinking defensive tackle. It is the guy who was going to be the 8th overall pick, and then the Jags got him in the 2nd round.
Right, Jamal Taylor, right?
I think so. I think it is Taylor. I'm drawing a blank on it. Jaguars' 2nd round pick. It's weird I can tell you that, but I can't tell you his name. I think when you look at it, Florida has a lot of things to answer. Offensive line.
I said all that before you said it, by the way.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Good job.
Thanks for listening to me.
Good job for that. Florida's still, even at 8, I think a threat, especially as good as that defense has been. I think Dan Mullen, again, a lot of things that these top teams have in common is the coach is there and is established. I think Dan Mullins is one of those guys that's an up-and-comer. Florida's got some questions to answer, but they're still a dangerous team. Notre Dame at 9. Drew, is that too high or too low for a team that made the college football playoffs, but then got kind of embarrassed when they played a team like Clemson?
Super embarrassed.
And we were talking about them like, do they deserve to be there? And I was one of those guys. I was like, I don't think so. And then they got blown out 34-3 or 33-3.
And I said they could have won. You know, I when I was like, I kind of see that, you know, Notre Dame could possibly have an upset here, and they totally let me down.
You don't say. Yeah, absolutely. After that, we have the Texas Longhorns coming back. This, to me, super overrated. Super overrated. I think people are desperate, or college football and all of their owners and all of the people running it in the NCAA want this team to be good because there's so many Longhorns fans out there because they want a competitive Big 12. They want to have a team that's going to push Oklahoma. And maybe they want Oklahoma State to be good. They want to have another conference like the Big 10 that has 2 or 3 or 4 of these teams that look like they can be top-level teams. But let me talk about why they're overrated really quick. Before we move on, 7 out of their 10 wins were by single digits. When you're playing in college football, you can't have that. I mean, you're playing cupcakes some of these weeks. You're playing teams that don't deserve to be playing in the same stadium as you. You cannot beat them by single digits and expect to be a top-level team. Part of the reason they're this highly rated is they beat Georgia in a bowl game. I don't care. When you're Georgia and you don't make the playoffs, a lot of these players are going into it saying, man, I'm leaving. I do not care what happens in this game. My objective is don't get hurt. So when you see Texas win it, to me, does not carry a lot of weight. It just doesn't. I think this is one of those games that, or this is one of those teams that they're highly rated because what they did to Georgia and because they're as popular as they are. If this was, if this was Wisconsin, if this was another Big Ten team that nobody's talking about, this is a Northwestern that upset Georgia or somebody like that, they wouldn't be sitting at number 10. They'd be sitting much lower. I mean, if you're talking about 7 to 10 of their wins were by single digits, it just wouldn't happen.
A lot of people saying that Texas is back.
You got to prove it. This is the prove it year.
I was going to say I need to see some proof first.
They also only have 2 starters coming back on defense. Again, questions all over the board for the Longhorns.
And this is one of the biggest struggles I have with college football is the rotation of starters and people moving on into other careers is teams staying at the top. And when you don't have a top recruiting class like, you see your SEC teams always seem to always have teams like, Texas who have struggled these last couple of years or
pretty much since Mac Brown left.
Yeah, and teams like who I follow, Iowa Hawkeyes, they struggle to keep people there or bring people in because they're not those big exciting classes. But Texas used to be, and I think that's what you're getting at is the fact that college program, the NCAA is excited to see Texas winning a game, especially a big bowl game like that. They're hoping that they're pushing over that hump and getting back to being a very popular team in college football.
I totally agree, but I think this might be one of those teams that gets upset in the first couple weeks and we see a major drop in the rankings. I think the Longhorns have so much to prove, so much turnover on defense, and even last year, I can't say that they were one of those teams that just dominated people. They squeaked by. And in college, in the pros, it doesn't matter, right? Winning's winning. Right. In college, how much you win by absolutely affects things. It absolutely affects your perception. It absolutely affects not just
ranking.
Not just what everyone thinks of you, though. It affects how much recruiting you can do. You can only, if you go to a lot of these recruits and you say, yeah, we won 10 games, that's what they want to hear, but then you go and tell them we won this one by 9, we won this one by 4, we won this one by 3, and you've got people like Alabama and Ohio State going out there being like, yeah, we blew somebody up by 25 points. We won by 29. It does hurt your recruiting on top of what everyone else thinks of you in the rankings. So I think Texas is overrated. Couple quick teams that I think should be higher than they are, that should replace some of these teams. I don't want to just be negative, Drew. I want to be positive. Who should be in some of these spots?
Do it.
I think A&M is one of those teams. When you look at Jimbo Fisher and what he brought to Florida State, even going into Texas A&M, that offense was super explosive. He's one of the best offensive minds in college football. They're going to get there. It's only year 2. He hasn't had time for his guys that he's recruited to finally start developing and get to the point where they're in a ton of starting roles, but they'll get there. Another couple of years, A&M is going to be a force because Jimbo Fisher is there. Again, it's all about the coach, right?
Yeah.
And I think A&M is one of those teams that has the most to gain. They still have a lot of questions on the defensive side. They have a lot of turnover on the defensive side, but they were bad at defense anyway, so that's okay. I mean, they were putting up 60, 70 points some games, but they were giving up 50 or 60 points. They were the Kansas City Chiefs of the college game. I think another year or two's worth of recruiting, they'll be much better on defensive side of the ball. Right. Going forward, a couple more. Again, Penn State I think should be higher. I think they were at 14. Oregon at 13 should be higher. They were returning with Justin Herbert, returning quarterback. They're going to be one of those teams that has kept the entire offense together. You just don't see that in college sports. Usually you lose at least one or two guys because they're too old to have any eligibility or they move on to the NFL. They're bringing everybody back on offense and the number 1 rated quarterback in this class. Watch out for Oregon in a weak Pac-12. I wanted to say Washington because, again, they changed up their quarterback as well, but Washington wasn't as impressive as I thought they could be. I think when you look at the biggest winners or the teams that are going to move forward in the rankings, A&M, watch for Penn State, and Oregon are 3 of those teams that stand to gain a lot of ground early on in the season.
Yeah, Washington was a team last year that totally disappointed me. I told you they were going to make the playoffs, and they did not do as well as I thought they would.
In a very weak Pac-12. That was probably the weakest conference in college football.
One of those teams, again, who started out in the rankings very high.
Yep.
And dropped almost completely.
And we're going to see it. We're going to see the shuffling of the deck, right? Yep. Half of these teams are going to be out of it by the end of things. But I think that's going to do it for college football. Again, I don't think they missed by too much. A lot of these teams probably deserve to be in the top 10. I just don't know that every one of these teams is a top 10 team. I even think Notre Dame got a little bit of the slight being a number 9 when they made the college football playoff. How much can you put on one game that you lose, even if it's bad, right? Because any given Sunday, right? Even in college, that's not the case, but, I mean, it should be. Maybe if they played Clemson again, it wouldn't be 34-3. Maybe it'd be 27-10. I don't know. I think Notre Dame, again, got the short end of the stick because they got blown out as bad as they did. I think they'll be okay moving forward. Maybe not quite as good as they were, and they have a tough schedule this year, but they're one of the teams that probably could move up from number 9 as well.
All right, we're getting into the Kansas City Chiefs.
I know you've been waiting for it. I'm done talking college. Let's talk the Chiefs.
Let's do it. Man, after an exciting 2018 season, the Kansas City Chiefs ended in the AFC Championship, losing literally by a penalty. They had that game. I thought my team was going to make the Super Bowl. 12-14 is how they ended their record. I see a huge increase. I don't know how you feel, but as an individual, as a show, we kind of see them going a little bit better than what they did last year.
They were number one in our offseason power rankings before and after.
Yeah.
They were the team to beat in the NFL last year. I have to turn the page because I wrote so much stuff about college football. I think when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they are a team that if we see an incremental increase on defense, if we see them go from 31st like they were to 25th, this is a Super Bowl team. I mean, they were just dominant on offense. Absolutely dominant. They need to keep that. They need to get a full season worth of production out of Carlos Hyde or Damian Williams, and that worries me a little bit. But when you throw the way they can, it doesn't seem to matter who's running the ball. We saw Damian Williams have success even after Kareem Hunt left.
And Williams is the number one on the official depth chart at this point. Hyde does take number 2, but I do see definitely a good 1-2 punch with that. I think Williams will spend most of his time in that backfield, probably 1, 2, and third down.
You think so?
Yeah, I think Hyde is only going to be kind of goal line and short yardage stuff where you need that pounder in the middle. Hyde's definitely significantly bigger than Williams is. I do think Hyde's going to become part of this offense. To be honest, I hope he has a lot left in the tank. I mean, this guy came out of San Francisco, really sought after, went to the Browns. We thought, man, this guy's going to push Chubb, out of the
really
starting
sought
position.
after, and then they drafted Nick Chubb with like a second round, like the first pick
Right.
in the second
And we
round.
thought even
and we were
though-
like, why did they do that?
Well, because they're like, Hyde's only going to be there for a couple years. Chubb can sit there and learn behind a great line, running back, and Chubb was, I think, better than anyone thought he was going to be.
Yep. Going to the comments really quick. Sean, we always appreciate each and every one of the shares, man. Bring everybody into the conversation. Bring all your friends in because we like talking to them too. Also, Frank says Mahomes will be better this year. That's a big statement. MVP better in 2019 than 18.
5,000.
Have you heard of the sophomore slump? And I know last year,
touchdowns. Well,
I'm the reverse. Last year was the second year. That was supposed to be the sophomore slump. This is the second year starting. I think teams will be a little better equipped to defend him. I think missing Kareem Hunt will take a small step back from this offense too. I think they'd be better with Kareem Hunt than without him. I think you agree with that, right? I mean, we talked about these guys like Carlos Hyde and Damian Williams don't have the same home run ability that Kareem Hunt has, where he can go and take a 6-yard dump off and turn it into an 80-yard reception.
No,
there might be a bit of a step back there.
No, you're 100% right. But and when Hunt left last year, you saw the offense decline just mildly, but I think that's more the fact of he was part of their playing the plan for the games. I mean, you can't just take 10 weeks and just throw it down the drain in week 1. This is a significant injury without being an injury to lose Hunt.
Right.
Now they got a whole off season. Like I said, they're going to have a good combination with Williams and Hyde. You're going to see other backs get in there. I'm blanking on the young man's name. They switched from corner to running back. I think he's going to sit there and see some time as well. You have the other Williams as well, Damon Williams, finding time in this backfield. Luckily for any running back that's in the Chiefs organization, Andy Reid's offense is very friendly towards a running back.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, look at all those years with Brian Westbrook. And you go and look at some of these other guys, even Carlos Hyde. I was the guy saying, is Carlos Hyde as good as he is, or is it the system that makes him look that good? We're going to find out in Cleveland, even though I don't think it'll be a perfect test because Cleveland's going to have a bunch of players on there that are going to be soaking up a lot of the attention. I think if you move Kareem Hunt somewhere else, I don't think he'd look as special as he does, but you disagree with that, and that's okay. I think it's one of those situations that even losing him, though, will make this offense take a bit of a step back. They're going to have, and I'm not talking a major step back. They could go from number 1 to number 1 by like a slimmer margin when some of these other teams catch up to him. But you can't tell me missing Kareem Hunt and replacing him with Carlos Hyde, who, even though everyone had high hopes for him, really has laid duds in both Jacksonville and Cleveland, because those were both his jobs to win, is going to be a suitable replacement.
It does. And it's right to Frank's comment. It does take it back. Instead of being a number 1 for sure running back out there every time, now it's running back by committee. Now, we've seen that fail in a lot of other systems in the NFL. The question is, can Andy Reid finally have it? Because if you go back, you look at Andy Reid,
There's usually the guy.
It was usually that.
Even with Charles, though, let's go back to the Charles days. I mean, with
Charles was purely because of injury.
Well, I'm saying, like, in his day. I mean, even when he was there, they let Spencer Ware carry the ball. They let some of these other guys like
you got to think
West.
when Andy Reid came in, Jamal Charles at the end of it, almost the end of his career in Kansas City, he had to find an air replacement to it. So that's where you saw Spencer Ware and.
But we've seen some sharing. I don't want to say Andy Reid can't share the ball, but he does prefer to have the bell cow. He does prefer to have the elite running back like a Westbrook or a Kareem Hunt. Yeah, exactly. He wants to have the guy. You're not going to have that this year in Kansas City. I just don't see it. Unless Carlos Hyde goes back to some of his early days.
They're putting a lot of their chips into Damian Williams, who really significantly wasn't even a known name. I mean, still really isn't until he found himself playing after Hunt disappeared in a sense.
Keep an eye on Damian Williams in fantasy. That's all I can say. Scoop him at the bottom of the round, a couple bottom rounds where everyone forgets about him.
Even with Frank saying running back by committee, Damian Williams is going to carry the significant amount of this load until injured.
And it's because he's going to catch. I don't think we're going to see that too much out of Carlos Hyde in the backfield. We're going to see more out of Damian Williams with what he can do after he catches the ball. You're going to see more out of Damian Williams catching than you are going to see him just pounding the rock. I think they might have brought Carlos Hyde in to do that, but the Chiefs want to throw first. This is a team that's going to throw before they try to move the ball on the ground. We're going to see the Chiefs get the ball into playmakers' hands. I think they see Damian Williams as more of a playmaker than Carlos Hyde at this point.
And I have to agree with him as well. I do want to get back to Frank's comment where he said Mahomes will be better this year. Man, I hope so. But being realistic, what he did last year is one of the most impossible things to ever reach in the NFL right now and in the way the NFL is set. That's 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns.
Yeah, fantastic year.
It is. Well, it's one of the best years.
Yeah, fantastic.
I mean, there's only been one quarterback that's done more touchdowns than him.
It was, to me, like the meeting of, like, everything went right. And except for the Kareem Hunt thing, right? But everything went right. For most of the season, you had a great running back. Maybe a top 10 running back if he's as good as you think he is. I'm not quite so convinced. But maybe a top 10 running back. On top of it, you have the best tight end in football with Gronkowski being hurt and Travis Kelce. You have a top 5 receiver in Tyreek Hill out there. Top 7 if you want to nitpick and say Tyreek Hill's not a top 5 guy. You had a great offensive-minded Andy Reid. You even had a defense that was good at taking the ball away and setting up the offense to score. And you had a defense that was going to give up a lot of points. So the offense kept coming back out on the field. I think when you look at the way everything kind of converged for him, you don't need 5,000 yards out of him. If the defense plays better and you can run a little bit more, that's okay too. Like, you can go from those 5,000 yards to 4,200 because you don't need him to keep making plays. And we saw that happen where the Chiefs would let people catch up to them, and then all of a sudden you have to turn the offense back on, start the car back up because we let teams creep in on them. If the defense improves a little bit, we're not going to need to see the same kind of year out of Patrick Mahomes for them to have the same success.
And we
think they are, right?
And one of the most important things that I think that we left out is the fact we didn't leave it out, but how unrated this offensive line is. And to be honest with you, you can honestly say that right side of that offensive line is the best right side of any offensive line in the whole NFL. Ian says Kansas City gets lucky that they're in a bad division.
But they play the Chargers. And they play a rough team like the Denver Broncos, who played them the toughest.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chargers had that game at the end of the year where they played them tough, but Denver played them tough twice. Yeah. Denver, to me, even though they're not a sexy team or a team that's going far, it's kind of like Buffalo. It's kind of like Tennessee. You don't want to play these teams because they beat you up. They played them twice. Yeah. Is Oakland at the bottom of the barrel last year? Sure. Yeah. And everyone was saying that they're not a good team.
And Denver was 5-11. I get why you can sit there and say this is a bad division, but realistically, it's not a bad division. It is not even close to being one of the worst divisions in the NFL. You guys sit there and look. The Broncos were not too far off from winning a Super Bowl a few years ago. I'm sorry. They have one of the best defenses that.
They were a tiebreaker away from losing to the Chargers.
Right.
Is my point here, Ian.
They
were a tiebreaker away from losing the division.
They play a lot of teams. They play a lot of teams that are better than them. Really tough.
And I don't want to point fingers, but Ian's a Steelers fan, right? I mean, how long was it just the Ravens and Steelers when we were talking about the Browns and the Bengals here? Yep. So sometimes that helps. I mean, look at the Patriots. The Patriots have definitely feasted on having a bad division. That can help you for sure, but I don't want to say that they've been in a bad division just because the Broncos didn't finish with a good record. This is still the team that you don't want to play because they're going to go rough you up a little bit on defense. It's one of those divisions that, even though the Broncos and Raiders didn't necessarily finish with the best record, still gave the Chiefs some headaches when they went to play them. I mean, Denver, it took the final seconds the first time they played them. It was like 27-28. They were one of the closest games the Chiefs had all year long.
and I don't want to ignore the Raiders, and I see Stevens taking a jab at you. I'll let you read that, but you don't want to ignore the Raiders either. Even though their defense right now is atrocious, that offense has a great quarterback, and now you have one of the best wide receivers in the game playing on there, and an offensive line that still kind of grow itself with John Gruden trying to create his scheme on offense. I mean, this team, I think, is going to surprise some other NFL teams. Do I think it's Kansas City? No, I don't. I think Kansas City will sweep the Raiders this year. Surprise, surprise. But do I think that...
Don't give it away.
But I do think that the Raiders are going to surprise a lot of teams, especially when Brown and Carr start getting on the same page. Watch out. The Raiders are going to probably steal some games against some tough players.
The
tough teams.
The parity in the NFL is great. And I'll get to Steven's comment here in a second, but we are talking Raiders. He's a Raiders fan. I know he'll appreciate this. When you talk about the parity in the NFL, the Raiders are like a lot of other teams that are at the bottom of the barrel where they do one thing very well. If Josh Jacobs pans out and you have a good running back there that you spent a first-round pick on, you have Antonio Brown, you have Williams from the Chargers, you have receivers, you have a decent offensive line, and I still think you have a good quarterback in Derek Carr. You have the offense figured out now.
Yeah.
The NFL at this point now is more competitive, I think, than it's ever been. There are no bad teams. Even teams like Tampa Bay, that we think is the worst team in football right now, still throws the ball really, really well.
Yeah.
Everybody does something really well. And I think that's when you look at the Raiders, they still are going to play a lot of offense. And that's enough to beat teams sometimes in the NFL. You just need to get hot on the right day and you can still win. Going to his comment, though, he says, no one is scared to play Tennessee. Come on now. They should be. The team was 9-7 3 years straight. They beat the Chiefs. That was probably the better team in the playoffs 2 years ago. This is a team that, again, third overall in defense. You should be worried when you play Tennessee. It's not someone you look at and say, man, I can't wait to play these guys.
They put a bounty out on Kelsey. They should be getting fined and some draft
They didn't put a bounty
out.
out there. That's just the only reason we signed Jonathan Cyprien. is to go hurt people. He's an Eagle now. Look out, NFC East.
Ethan said the Raiders' team chemistry will tear them apart by week 7. I actually think the complete opposite. I think that they will struggle early, and as the year gets along, I think they'll start getting together and actually becoming a better team. I'm completely against it, Ian. I get that you're like saying the sense of like you throw Brown's personality in there, you throw Gruden's personality in there. At some point in time, these guys are professionals, and I think Brown realizes this is kind of it in the sense of his career. He's like, you make it here, or I don't know what he's gonna be doing afterwards. I get he'll find himself another home if the Raiders like quote unquote release him,
right?
Which they won't. Brown has to make it work in a Raiders uniform,
even though his feet look disgusting. I don't know if you saw that picture. Don't Google it. If you haven't, spare yourself.
Don't want to.
Also, Frank says the Bucks do what? They pass well. This is the best passing offense in football. Statistically, they threw for more yards. They were the highest ranked passing offense ahead of the Chiefs, ahead of the Rams, ahead of the Steelers, ahead of all these other teams that had to throw the ball or like to throw the ball. Part of it's because they couldn't run. Part of it's because they were behind. They throw the ball well, or at least they used to. They lost some receivers in Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries. They're still probably going to throw well because they still got 2 good tight ends and 2 good receivers at the very least. And Brashad Perriman. They have him too.
Ian says, don't forget Vontaze Burfict. Him too, man.
That's going to be interesting. Vontaze Burfict and Antonio Brown. You know that famous hit they had where Burfict was probably trying out there targeting Brown, trying to hurt him?
I guarantee it's already done.
I hope so, but
I guarantee it's
what happens when they start losing? And all that old stuff starts coming back up.
Well,
it's interesting. Exactly.
It's very interesting, but I think Burfict's the same thing. The same thing I was getting at. This is it. If you don't make it work here at the Raiders uniform on your back, good luck finding another team that's anywhere remotely.
He was out there for a long time, and he doesn't have the opportunity that I think Antonio Brown will have. Yeah, even Antonio Brown. Like you said, they cut him tomorrow. I think he'd probably find another landing spot. Someone else to take that chance.
Yeah.
I don't think Vontaze Burfict's that guy, especially because I think a lot of players don't like him. Players do not, and if you've ever heard Chris Carter talk about this, players do not like guys that you get the impression they're out there to hurt people. I'm with you saying Vontaze Burfict can help the Raiders out. They need a guy with some attitude, but if you're that guy that I'm only out there to hurt somebody, unless you're a great player, there are going to be a lot of teams that don't want the attitude problem, don't want the guy upsetting the locker room. I think the Raiders are almost that last stop for a lot of guys this year.
Even with the whole thing about Burfict, I don't remember a whole lot of talk about teammates not liking him. It was always opposing players.
And that's fine. But a lot of these guys have played against him.
I get it, but I'm just putting a point out there. It's like,
and a lot of those Bengals teammates might not like him after this year when they go and play him.
You know what? A lot of people didn't like Lawrence Taylor.
Okay, but is Vontaze Burfict Lawrence Taylor?
No.
And that's the thing.
My point is that when people play tough, it does make you not liked upon someone else. Now, if you are, he has been known to try to go out there and hurt someone.
Yeah,
I agree that makes people not like you, players not like you.
And coaches. You got to remember, a lot of these coaches were players too. I think a lot of coaches are like, we don't need this guy in the locker room. I don't need someone who plays the game that way. And I think Chris Carter, again, had this long monologue talking about it. If you really wanted kind of insight in the way some of these guys in the locker room think about this stuff, go listen to that. Because he was like, there's no way this guy would be on my team. Or I would be going and asking for a trade. I think a lot of guys think that way.
I know what you're saying. I'm just putting a point out there that when people play the way he does, a lot of people don't end up liking you. That's just what happens.
And you're right. You're absolutely right. 100%. But we're talking about the Chiefs. We got to talk about that. One more quick comment where I got to defend myself. Frank says he lives in Tampa Bay, and if it wasn't for Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson, they wouldn't have a passing game. Jackson is gone now. You have Cameron Brate. You have O.J. Howard, who's up and coming as a tight end. Cameron Brate, I think, is the better of the two, even though he doesn't get as much play time because they spent a first-round pick on O.J. Howard. On top of that, you still have Chris Godwin. Really good player. Godwin. I always mess that up. I think it's Godwin. And you still have Mike Evans. You got 4 good receiving options. There's a lot of teams that would beg to have 2.
Yeah.
Buffalo, looking at you. New York Jets. There are teams that would love to have 2 of those guys. So they can still throw. Even though Tampa Bay we think is the worst roster in football right now, we still have to give them credit. They're still going to throw the ball, and they might wind up with 5 or 6 wins because they just outshoot somebody some weeks.
It's a good possibility.
All right, we're still talking Chiefs.
Yeah, we are. Let's go ahead and talk about their additions and their subtractions of what they did in this offseason. There's a lot of subtractions. You're missing a lot of players that were significant headstones of the Kansas City offensive line, offensive weapons, defense, because you got to throw Kareem Hunt into the weapons. That's why I'm throwing that out there. There's a lot of losses.
And your guy, Chris Conley.
Yeah, Chris Conley.
Hit the bricks.
I was a huge fan of him. But I think one of the most significant pieces that are going to be missed here, and it's nothing on defense at all. And I know that they played a huge part of last year without him. But that's Mitch Morse. God, if I could talk, the center who found himself in Buffalo, he was for a long time the centerpiece of that offensive line. To lose him for sure to another team, and he found himself hurt again. By the way.
And this is also kind
significant.
of it's also the way the NFL works, though. The Chiefs lost him again, like you said, he got hurt, and then things were okay, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes wasn't taking a ton. He wasn't Deshaun Watson, where everyone was getting hurt or where everyone was hitting him and constantly under pressure. They were able to run the ball still, so they said, you know what, we can probably go with the cheaper guy. You're going to go get that $50 million contract from Buffalo. There's the door. Thank you for all you've done, but we have another guy, and that's to me the credit for the offensive line for the Chiefs is they've found a way to be good.
Yeah.
Maybe not great every year, but they've found a way to be good consistently, and that's tough in the NFL to have that consistent offensive line play.
No, you're absolutely. Hopefully they can stay healthy for my sake, and there's not a rotation through that offensive line because the best offensive lines are the healthy offensive lines.
Absolutely. A couple of quick additions here. Tyrann Mathieu, I think, will be the Eric Berry that they missed last year, even though I don't think he's the he's a good player. He's a very good player. He's not Eric Berry.
He's not the ball hawk that Eric Berry is.
Not Eric Berry at all. But he's a good player. I think when you get a healthy Tyrann Mathieu versus an injured Eric Berry, again, you're way out in the plus because Eric Berry played 2 games last year, 3 games?
Yeah.
Almost nothing. I think bringing him in is going to help the secondary out a lot. They need a leader. He's a guy that everyone can rally behind. He's the honey badger, right? He's that guy who's going to bring the toughness to this secondary. That's what they've been missing. I think him coming in, there's a reason Houston didn't want to let this guy go. And I think this is one of the best moves. And if they didn't have to franchise Jadeveon Clowney, you probably might have seen the franchise tag on Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the only addition, I don't want to ignore the subtractions, but the only addition on that defensive side that I do want to talk about is the addition of Darren Lee. He is, at this point in time, is not a starting linebacker in this 3-4 defense, but he's going to be a great rotational piece for when you see Wilson, Hitchens, and even Ragland come out for a breather. Darren Lee will always be the first one in there. When you have 4 legitimately starting linebackers in this league as your rotation piece, that linebacking core should be a stout one.
Should be, but we saw them kind of fall flat last year. I want to see improvement. This is the group that can tie this defense together. If we saw a good defensive line, even with Justin Houston missing some time. We saw D Ford play well. We saw not Chris Hogan, their defensive tackle, Chris Jones play really well. I think when you look at things, this team need, and even the secondary, as bad as they were, I mean, they were ranked 27th in the passing game, they took the ball away.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Steven. He says, I'm going to have to smoke a fatty blunt to get through all this Kansas City talk. The world will be a better place without this team. I think the same thing about your team.
I think a lot of fans that go to away games at Oakland think that, like, man, that fan base is wild. So we appreciate you for being one of the rational.
Steven's one of them.
We appreciate you for being one of the rational Raiders fans.
He was the one throwing beer bottles and hitting old ladies in the head with them at the Broncos Stadium.
Ooh, yikes. All right.
That's him.
We won't dwell on that.
No, I will. I remember, Steven. That never happened.
Let's talk about some of these subtractions. Because, again, when you're already bad and you lose a lot of pieces that could be good, like Justin Houston, Steven Nelson, I know the Steelers paid him a lot of money. I don't think he's a great player. I think they overpaid for him, but he's a guy that was on a defense that took the ball away, and that's important in the NFL. If you really want to know who's good in the NFL, go click on defensive rankings and click takeaways. Look who's at the top. It's teams like the Rams and the Saints and the Chiefs, teams and the Patriots, teams that go really far tend to have a pretty good takeaway or turnover differential. I think when you're losing all these guys, even though I want to say, yeah, you stand to improve, going from the 31st passing defense to whatever it's going to be next year, you also might be losing some ball hawks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Lewis, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us. Ian says, nah, Kansas City is a cool city. I got to agree.
Loves the barbecue there.
Steven says,
so does Andy
he
Reid.
has calmed it down a bit. Steven, that's what a good woman does to you, man.
We're glad.
He's getting married soon.
I didn't know that, but congrats to that. We'll move forward. We got to talk schedule here. Before we do that, I want to talk about the draft for just a second. They reached on me, Cole Harmon, Drew. You'll never sell me otherwise. They panicked and took the fastest, most dynamic guy they could find, thinking Tyreek Hill was going to get suspended.
You haven't seen the highlights at training camp? What? This guy is an elite burner.
He's a burner. Elite? I don't know.
I'm not that sold on him either.
Look, they needed a special teamer, and they needed a guy who's quick to replace Tyreek Hill if he got suspended. Lo and behold, Tyreek Hill's not suspended. So and now you have another fast guy.
And they got the player they wanted. I don't understand it. I get
this was the oh shit move.
This is the scare tactic.
Move. Yeah, exactly.
We're in a
they
lot
said
of trouble.
Tyreek Hill is going to get suspended. We need a fast guy who's going to take the top off a defense like he did. So what did they do? They looked at that 40 time and they said, "Whoo, Mecole Hardman can move." You know what Mecole Hardman can't do? Play receiver. I think this guy's going to be a good special teamer. To start, they're going to have to develop him if he's going to be a good wide receiving weapon for Patrick Mahomes going forward. I want to see better routes run. I want to see better hands. But speed kills, right? You're going the Al Davis approach here, taking a page out of the Raiders' book, Steven. They're getting the fastest guy. I think maybe Paris Campbell beat him out. I think he's one of the fastest guys in this entire draft.
Right. Ian said Nelson has not been looking good in camp. I think he's talking about
Steven Nelson.
Steven
talking
Nelson,
about the Steelers. Yep, and you paid this guy $25 million over 3 years. Again,
what did I say?
Coming out of the 31st ranked passing defense.
What did I say?
What did I say? Why did they do this?
No, I said you're going to get a player that can play you 16 games, but
not well.
Not well.
Let's just hope
they have
the
a lot of high
steps
hopes.
Up. Yeah.
The coach, I'm blanking out his name right now.
Tomlin
spoke very highly of him. They're excited about him. They think it's a great addition to their defense. Me, on the other hand, I'm kind of like, that's the reason why we let him go. You're not going to get anything special. You get a player that will play well. He's a short corner. He'll be their step for step with every wide receiver almost in this league. But that receiver's catching the ball, and every now and then you're going to see a broken tackle.
He's no Terrence McGee. He's not 5'6", but you're right. He's got some growing to do if he's going to keep up with some of these tall receivers.
He's like 5'10".
Yeah.
Which is short in a sense
it
of
is.
corner.
Well, these days. These days everyone wants the guy who's 6'3" and can play corner like Jalen Ramsey. It's
Don't
tough to
quote
get
me
that
on the
guy.
height, but
it's tough
somewhere
to get that
around
guy.
there.
I understand it. He's going to struggle against some of the bigger guys. He's going to struggle against some of the smaller and faster guys. He's going to struggle a little bit. But if you put together a good defensive front that can get after the quarterback, Steven Nelson might be the guy who makes things up for you. My biggest disappointment was just 3 years, $25 million for a guy that is coming out of the second worst defense in the NFL. And
yeah.
There wasn't a point in time I looked at Steven Nelson and said, man, he's the only good corner here. It wasn't like Marcus Peters, where things were going bad, but Marcus Peters was looking good. You just never saw that out of Steven Nelson, I think.
In his defense. Thanks, Bobby. In his defense, he did get picked on. I mean, usually the corner that gets picked on in defensive.
Everyone not named Kyle Fuller got, or not Kyle Fuller. What's the Fuller for you guys?
It's Fuller, but I'm blanking on the first name.
Yeah, Kyle Fuller's the Bears.
Because you said
anyone
Fuller.
not named Fuller got picked on.
Because you said Fuller, now I'll never get it. Or Kyle Fuller, I'll never get it. But He literally, when you have a corner that gets picked on, quote unquote, like Eli Apple for the Saints, that was the side that always got the ball thrown to.
And Giants.
Statistically, they're the ones that struggle because they're constantly getting the ball from themselves.
Let's not pretend this isn't an ongoing thing with Eli Apple. He's been picked on for a while.
He actually played pretty well for the Saints.
If you say so.
It was an increase.
The Saints
from the Giants.
did well with him. Yeah.
It was an increase from the Giants.
It's hard not to be. All right, couple more quick ones. Juan Thornhill coming in, cornerback from Virginia. They need more out of this kid. I love this pick. Physical guy. I think he's going to be able to play really well for the Chiefs.
He has moved into safety.
Well, that's disappointing because they need corners. But I still like Juan Thornhill. I think he's one of those guys that has the athleticism you want to see. He's a good player. This is a good draft pick for me. I think they struck out on Mecole Hardman. I think they panicked, but they kind of settled back down, took another good second-round pick in Juan Thornhill, and then they did maybe the steal of the draft. I think Kalen Saunders is a Jarrell Casey-like defensive tackle that he may not be a guy that you're like, man, you watch the tape and you're like, he's the most physical. He's not Aaron Donald where he's just incredibly fast or anything. He's a big guy at 300 pounds that can make people move and can move with speed himself. I think him playing next to Chris Jones is going to be dynamic for years going forward. This is the guy I wanted to this is like one of my steals of the draft. He's one of the guys I was like, watch out for him. I wish my team would have drafted him.
I got to completely disagree with you about Thornhill. Him and Swarson are battling for the position at safety. They're trying to see who's going to get that. That's a huge position during training camp that a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans are focusing on. Daniel Swarson, if you guys can remember, was released 2 years ago and then re-signed again after Eric Berry didn't really stay healthy. They went out and drafted Thornhill, hoping that this might be the next guy that kind of takes that position at safety. To see them battle it out, I to be honest with you, I would be very surprised if Thornhill doesn't split, if not gets the first spot with Swarson getting beat out.
Where was the disagreeing with me? You don't think he's a good player?
Oh, you were just saying the fact that you said that he's at safety. I think it's a positive thing that he's at safety.
I didn't say necessarily that him playing safety versus him playing corner is a bad thing, but I think the Chiefs need corners. And that's why I'm saying that's disappointing. He was a corner in
that's why they went out and got Breland. That's why they have Fuller. I mean, I agree with you, but the nice thing about having Swarson is Thornhill can run to the other side and play, slot or wherever they want him to play.
I just think they're hurting in the secondary. If you want the truth, I think they are absolutely missing out in the secondary. So they're trying to put the best four they can on the field. That's why there's
like a complete remake of it. That,
exactly.
3 out of the 4 starters are changed.
I think they're trying to put the best four on the field they can. We know Tyrann Mathieu could be playing at safety. And we know Fuller's going to be playing at corner. Other than that, it's up in the air. Right. I think they're probably trying to experiment right now, trying to find what the best 4 or 5 guys they can put out there is, because these days you need 5 secondary players. You can't get by because half the teams run nickel half the time.
Right.
So, all right, we'll move on. I think they drafted really well once Mecole Hardman was off the board. I think that was kind of a mistake. Not necessarily saying he's the terrible player, but with what you spent on him, I think there were other receivers out there who would have been a better pick. We'll go into their schedule. Because things, again, when you finish up at the top of the NFL, you get a tough schedule to start, and I think the Chiefs have a tough schedule, but we still like their chances.
Kendrell Fuller.
Sorry. My mistake.
No. It was driving me nuts. I knew it started with a K, and I was like, it's not Kyle.
Yeah. That's the Bears corner. I always say Kyle. They're all Kyles to me.
All of them.
All of them. All right, we'll talk about week 1. They have the Jaguars on the road. And then you go and play the Raiders after that. Both road games to start against teams that, on paper, not as talented as the Chiefs. Did we see any kind of trip-up games here?
I don't think week 1 will be a trip-up game, but I do think it will be the closest of the two because that defense, the Jaguars, have, as much as it totally went down last year after the first time they played Kansas City. They were the number 1 defense when they played Kansas City. I believe it was week 4 in the last year's season. They were coming in with the number 1 ranked defense, and Kansas City just put a stomping on them. This is going to be a team.
They broke the Jags.
They did. And this is going to be a team where they're going to want a little bit of revenge. But unfortunately for them, Andy Reid seems to always start out the season hot. He seems to have a new kind of scheme and offense. If it's some kind of gimmick play or whatever, it will be used in this game, and you're going to see Kansas City beat them. But I think the Jags have the closest chance of beating them. As far as the Raiders go, I think the Raiders, again, have to get a couple weeks underneath them before that chemistry makes a difference and they get a win anywhere, and that's not going to be against Kansas City.
I totally agree with you. This is a tough start for the Raiders, having to play this division game early on. You want to play these guys like week 11 before they go in their bye week, where maybe they overlook you and you get to slap around and keep up with them on offense, and maybe we turn this into a shootout and it's the 54-51 game against the Rams we saw last year. you don't want this early on. When you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to establish what you're going to do with Derek Carr and these new weapons, because you're replacing a lot of players in this offense. There are a lot of changeovers. I mean, running back, both starting receivers are probably changing for Oakland, and then you got to go and play Kansas City that has the same tight end, that has the same quarterback, that has pretty much the same offensive line, that has the same wide receiver in Tyreek Hill. They have
Watkins.
And Sammy Watkins, who will probably be hurt by week 2.
Whoa.
They have so many guys returning. I gotta go with the Chiefs here. The Jaguars are gonna be a bit of a struggle, I think. I think this is gonna be one of those games the Jags are gonna be looking for a little bit of vengeance. It's early enough in the season, they won't have given up yet. I think the Jaguars with Nick Foles will still lose the game because just like the Raiders are trying to find themselves, but I think this defense might make it a struggle from Kansas City. And we have some experts out there saying, pump the brakes on KC, they're not going to be good because the Jags put up a good game against them.
Frank says Jacksonville has a better quarterback now. Let me get through these comments before you go in. Ian says this will be a game to make the Raiders turn on themselves. And Steven says the Raiders will beat the Donkeys in week 1, but he agrees on this one that Oakland isn't going to win in week 2. He also says, I love Steeler fans saying they will turn on themselves. He says it's great stuff.
But he might be right. I mean, what if things go wrong and you get beat 54-6? Like, what if that great offense gets shut down by a bad defense? Or Frank Clark goes wild and sacks Derek Carr 5 times. Or Derek Carr gets hurt. Ian might be right here. This could be the game that you get dunked on and absolutely blown out of the water. And guys with big egos like Vontaze Burfict and Antonio Brown and even John Gruden, maybe things stop gelling. Maybe things kind of go off the rails here. I'm not saying it's going to happen this early. I think this is probably something that probably happens to Oakland farther down the road if it's going to happen at all. But I think when you look at things, this is a game that you need to stay competitive in when you look at how bad this defense has been if you're going to have any kind of growth for the season. You don't want to get beat here 56-3. Nobody ever does. But, I mean, this is one of those games that could throw your season off, just like happened to Jacksonville last year, because you can get stomped by an offense that's this good.
And as far as Frank's comment goes, Jacksonville does have a better quarterback. There's no doubt about it. Nick Foles being there is a huge step up, but it's
as a Titans fan, I hope not. I love the Blake Bortles days,
but it's gonna be a while before he starts gelling because this offensive weapons around him is nothing like he had in the Eagles organization. So it's gonna be a struggle. Even though I agree with you completely that it is a way better quarterback than what there was before.
Now, things get a little bit tougher as we move on through the schedule here. They play the Ravens week 3. Should be a little bit tougher. Again, one of the better games we saw last year, right? And Sharif was talking all kinds of smack about this, saying the Ravens are winning this game. But then they get the Lions on the road, a team that's improving but probably not quite ready to compete with Kansas City. And then they go Colts week 5 here, Drew. Things are going to get interesting after this. There's a good chance that the Chiefs finish this 3-1 or 4-0 if they can come away with a difficult victory against the Ravens. If you want to play 3 teams on the road versus Lions, Raiders, and Jaguars, I think that's a good way to start. If you're going to play 3 of your road games, these are probably road games you want to go play.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They get the 2 tougher. I'm throwing week 5 in there where they get the Colts. When you get the tougher teams at home, you get them in front of your loud Kansas City fans.
It's nice being good, isn't it?
It is. You get the fans involved in it. Week 3, I think if this was a game in Baltimore, I'd probably have to say this is a loss because I think Baltimore will get behind this team and play well for them. But this is home. This is the first game at home. This is what the Chiefs are ready for. Everyone that's a Chiefs fan, maybe minus myself and realistic, thought where I don't say this out loud a lot is. Kansas City might not win a Super Bowl this year, but all these fans sit there and say that this is it. This is our year. When they get the Ravens in there, a playoff team last year, a team that almost beat us, this crowd's going to be loud, and Kansas City's going to win this game.
Ian's all in on the Lions. I'm going to remember this. Ian says this is going to be a win-loss win, and the Lions are the only team that walk away with a win here. Look, if I got to pick one to be the loss, I think Ravens, Colts, Lions, I'm taking the Lions to lose. I mean, maybe this is loss, win, loss if it's going to be something. But when you look at things and the way things are going to shake out here, I think Detroit, again, they play good defense. They're getting better. They're getting better on that defensive line. Are they going to have the firepower to keep up with them? I don't think they have the receivers anymore. And that's crazy to say about Detroit that's tried to throw forever. I don't think they have the receivers to keep up with this offense anymore.
Just want to remind everybody, last year Kansas City played the number 1 defense twice, and the Jaguars and the Ravens, and beat them twice. I'm just throwing that out there.
Sean, we're glad you're back, man. Also, Frank says, if luck is there. I'm not sure whether he's saying that Luck can beat them or whether he's saying that it doesn't matter if Luck is there.
Well, maybe.
Or maybe he's saying if Luck is with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know. This could be the first real test, because as much as you say the Ravens defense is going to shut them down, I want to say it's going to be different. They're reworking this secondary. They're getting better on the defensive front here. Kalen Saunders, I think, this might be the game where him and Chris Jones playing next to each other shut down the middle of that offense for the Ravens. They're not able to run up the gut, and all of a sudden you got to figure something out with Frank Clark coming off the edge. I think the Ravens are going to struggle in this game. I do. I think the Ravens, as good as that defense is, they're not holding out forever. Not against this defense, or not against this offense. You're going to have to put up points, and can Lamar Jackson beat what was a bad secondary, but like you said, has changed a lot. I think this is going to be a win for the Chiefs. I think the Ravens probably come up a little short here because the Chiefs have focused on fixing this defense as much as they have. I think the Colts is the first real test for this team is going to face.
Yeah, and Frank was saying if Luck is healthy against in Week 5 against the Colts.
Well, he put up all of 2018 healthy.
I said he played him.
He's a tough guy, but let's not forget his early part of his career. He's been hurt.
We played him and we beat him with Luck.
It took a snowboarding injury to knock this guy out. Okay, you played him and beat him with Luck, but you also played like a worse roster than what Kansas City has. Swap Mahomes and Luck, the Chiefs still win that game. I mean, the Chiefs are so much farther ahead than the Colts are, and this is why I'm telling everyone to pump the brakes on the Colts, because I don't think this roster's all that. They've got some good players. Darius Leonard looks like he's great. T.Y. Hilton's a great player. Malik Hooker's a good player. Quentin Nelson's a good player. But we're not that far removed from the Colts being like super garbage except for Andrew Luck.
Okay. Says it.
I know it's a lot to break down. Okay, yeah, he says the Titans fan. We're not that far away from Jacoby Brissett winning 4 or 5 games with this team.
Brissett.
Yeah.
Luck.
I know.
Significant difference.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's saying if Luck is healthy. And that's my point here. You take this roster and take the quarterback out of it? Okay, so here's my thing. Alex Smith won a bunch of games with the Kansas City Chiefs. Alex Smith, I didn't put up better numbers than Vince Young through the same number of years in my career. Put up great numbers with the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a great team with what you hope is an elite or great quarterback, or whatever the highest praise you can give the guy is.
Yeah.
This is a great team. The Colts are great because Andrew Luck is there throwing the ball.
But that's it. But it's the same thing with Kansas City. You take Mahomes out of there, Kansas City's going to fall on its face.
Because they don't have another guy. But if you took somebody else and put Kansas City... If you took Russell Wilson...
It's the same thing with the Colts.
No, it's not. If you took a mid-range quarterback, which team goes farther? Kansas City. Not even by a long shot.
I would give it Kansas City because of
they have the best tight end in
scheme.
football. They have a great coach. Not that I think Frank Reich is bad. They have a better coach than Andy Reid. They have an amazing receiver in Tyreek Hill. They have... great offensive line, even though the Colts played well last year.
When you look at that defense, and it's ranked number 31 last year, that defense was atrocious. It was giving up a lot of points. You got to have a quarterback back there putting up points.
Okay.
Colts defense was not 32.
On paper.
They were better
No, they
than
were
31.
like mid-range, and then you look at some games where they're
point.
giving up 42 points to the Jets. Let's not pretend this is a good defense.
It's better than a Kansas City last year. There's no doubt about it.
Sure, I agree. But they have so
when you're
many
talking
weapons
about paper,
on offense.
half the side of the field or half the side of the team on the defensive side is better than what Kansas City was producing.
No, they have like 3 or 4 good guys.
That's
it. They have 3 or 4 good players on defense, and that's it. I mean, this defensive front, they're better now with Justin Houston, but this defensive front isn't that good. They're really not. I mean, they have Darius Leonard backing them up. If something happens to Darius Leonard and he has a knee injury, this defense is going to go from like 18 to 25 real quick. They have Malik Hooker in the secondary. They don't have any good corners. They don't have any good defensive linemen, except for Justin Houston, who might or might not be the guy anymore. They don't have a good defense. They had some good games against teams that weren't ready to play, like Jacksonville, that put up 6 points. Like Tennessee, that couldn't do any. That couldn't find its ass with both hands.
Kansas City is an elite team, and they're the best ever. Thank you.
Exactly. See, there it is. Boom.
We're better.
We're better. I'm saying roster-wise, Kansas City is so much farther along than Indianapolis is.
I completely agree with you. Defensively, last year, regardless if we had the names or not, production-wise, Colts had a better defense.
But they didn't turn the ball over like Kansas City did, and you love that, right? You're the guy who's all about the turnovers.
That's because that's what we live on. That's what we live on when Bob Sutton is calling our defense.
But not just
turnovers.
Not just you. A lot of good teams are really good in the turnover differential. I think when you look at things, Indianapolis is a little overrated. And maybe this is just me being the Titans fan here. This roster is what it is because Andrew Luck is like a top 3 quarterback, top 5 at worst. And yeah, that's fine. But when you're playing the Chiefs, who have another top 5, top 7, top 9 guy in Patrick Mahomes, wherever we're going to see him land and fall out and shake out when things are done, top 3, whatever, it doesn't matter because they're just as good as you are at that position. Now you have the tight end that they don't have. Right. Eric Ebron is not Travis Kelce.
Oh, I'll give you that.
Now you have the receiver that they have. Tyreek Hill is better than T.Y. Hilton. I'm sorry, Colts fans. He just is.
I'll give you that. No,
the offensive line in Kansas City's been incredibly more consistent than Indianapolis has put up. I know Indianapolis had a good year, but that changes year to year. When you look at things, guys, look, even Kansas City's defense, give me the team that's going to shut somebody down for 2 quarters and we're going to go run up 35 points. And then, that's when the stats get bad.
The Andy Reid syndrome.
Exactly. Give me that over Indianapolis that gives up 42 points to the Jets with no receivers and no running back and Sam Darnold, a rookie quarterback. It's night and day. It's night and day.
All right, we got to move on.
Do we?
Week 1 through week 5, we actually have Kansas City not losing a game yet. They find themselves. They find themselves, again, another home game against the Texans. Again, another tough team, or a playoff team, but could be a playoff team again at home. Then they go on the road to the Broncos and again come back home and play possibly another playoff team in the Packers.
You're getting the good ones at home.
It's great.
Exactly. You're getting the good ones in Arrowhead.
One that I can't stand, but we'll get to that one.
Who's that? The Titans. I know. It's tough. It's just real tough. But going forward here, the Texans should be the easy win. I know everyone's saying, what? This team won the AFC South. What do you mean easy win? They got dunked on by the Colts, okay? I mean, even Deshaun Watson, I like his progression. They didn't significantly upgrade this offensive line. They brought in a couple of rookies that are maybe going to be good, maybe not.
Yeah.
They didn't go out like Buffalo and say, look, things weren't good enough. We need to go buy every offensive lineman under the sun. Instead, they said, we'll go and try to fix things as they are. They just cut Dante Foreman, I should say. I think that's how he pronounces it. They cut their 3rd-round heir apparent at running back to go with Lamar Miller, Mr. Underachiever. They have DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to be a problem in this game. Yeah. I guarantee you DeAndre Hopkins is going to have 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. But it's not going to be enough when you have all this other
distribution. The Honey Badger knows, okay?
And how do you beat Houston? They have a great front 7. They lost the Honey Badger. The secondary is still weak.
You kill Hopkins before he ever touches him.
Exactly. You better hope he's hurt or Deshaun Watson is, because they're going to light it up. Look, Houston's not a good team. And I know Frank's saying, what? They're not a good team. When you let your quarterback get hit 61 or sacked 61 times, you're not a good team. They won despite things. When you're battling the Jets, kind of like I just complained about with Indianapolis, when you're battling the Jets, you're not that good of a team. They did well. Okay,
Sharif's going to love this. He just joined us. But it's because of Deshaun Watson.
Yes. They have Deshaun Watson is a good quarterback, and they have a great receiver. They have a butt offensive line. They do. They're terrible.
It's the worst.
And everyone's like, Will Fuller, look at the statistics. Yeah. And he plays 4 games a year. Right? I mean, when you're not on the field, and I don't want to sound like Drew here.
Okay, we're not going to go that, Sharif. He's not Jesus. He's yet
he
to
did a lot with a little. He did a lot with a little. And I'll give him that. But
he didn't
Clowney is unhappy.
Houston still has a lot of homeless
He did, actually.
people.
He gave a lot of money to their kitchen staff and stuff. Deshaun Watson's a good kid. I like Deshaun Watson.
He is a good
I'm a Titans fan. The Texans got their guy.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
For a long time.
But now you got to protect him.
Hopefully for a long time.
Yeah, you can't give him the David Carr syndrome. You got to protect him.
Yeah.
And you got to give him a couple more weapons that are consistently going to be out there. Maybe Kiki Qte's out there. Maybe last year was a fluke, but we saw him get hurt.
Yeah.
They just don't have the offense that's going to keep up with the Chiefs. And on defense, how do you beat the Texans? You throw the rock.
Yeah.
And guess what the Chiefs are going to do? They're going to throw a little
And
bit.
I don't have a dog in this fight as far as the AFC South goes, but yeah, the Texans definitely got themselves a starter and a face of the franchise in Deshaun Watson. There's no doubt about it. This guy's good. Sharif says that Watson completed 68% completion rating with the worst offensive line.
Hands down. But
yes,
a lot of that.
Did. And by the way,
a lot of that comes from Deshaun.
I'm just saying a lot of starting quarterbacks have way better offensive lines and hope to reach 68%.
Yes, that is. You both made great points. The other thing I will say is DeAndre Hopkins had a 0.0 drop rate.
Yeah, he didn't drop anything.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're in trouble, it's nice to have that guy that you're like, DeAndre, please save me.
And that's not that he caught everything that came to him either. Because I want to say
there were misses. I'm saying drop rate, which means in and out of the hands.
Right, which is great, but that is a thing that Deshaun Watson needs to fix. And, of course, with the offensive line being atrocious and a lot of pressure on him, with that being said, that he had not a single drop, he only completed about 74, 75% of the catches thrown to him. So that is something that needs to be focused on a little bit by Deshaun Watson, though it's not his fault. But it doesn't matter. You can blame the offensive line all you want. It's still him throwing the ball.
Absolutely. Also, Sharif said that Watson is the only quarterback in history to start 0-3 and make the playoffs, not Tom Brady. Yeah, well, one of those 0-3 games, you lost to Blaine Gabbert. And you let Kevin Byard, a safety, throw a touchdown pass against you on special teams, and you lost 10-7 or something like that.
Burn.
So let's not pretend that it was all sunshine and roses. He still has some growing to do.
Burn.
He still has some growing to do. If you look at that Colts game where they dropped 21 points early, and you could only answer back with 7 points against, again, a defense that gave up 42 to the Jets, and had a number of other games that I can't think of right now where they struggled keeping teams off the board. Deshaun Watson still has some growing to do. But it's everything you want to see if you're a Houston Texans fan. That's all I can say. You want to see that development going forward, but you also want to see the roster evolve around him. You can't be like Seattle and put up this bad of an offensive line and just hope beyond hope that he can survive it. I think the Houston Texans, they won 10 games last year, but they have a lot of questions of their own to answer before we move into 2019.
Sharif, I got to disagree with you. It is not hate by Jake. It is not.
It's a little bit of hate. It's spiked a little bit, but I'm right.
I'm not going to defend you anymore. Burn him.
There's a little bit of hate. I just got to be honest. There's a little bit of hate. I hope the Texans crash and burn, but
no.
Deshaun Watson seems like a nice kid.
Your point is definitely across is the fact that it's not Deshaun Watson. It doesn't matter how great your quarterback is. That the rest of your team isn't sitting there giving him what he needs to succeed and win in this league. It doesn't matter how great your quarterback is. Quote, unquote, David Carr. You guys had a franchise quarterback in David Carr. You let him get destroyed by other teams. This is exactly what's happening right now with Deshaun Watson. I don't care if it's 68% this year. It might be 56% next year because your offensive line getting fixed. Just because you drafted 2 linemen out of the draft doesn't mean they're panning out. This is a big issue that you got to do. You got to fix this offensive line.
And you could have been Buffalo. You could have been Buffalo and said, "I don't care what it takes. We're going to bring in 38 guys, and 5 or 6 of them are going to work."
You got to fix this your play calling as well. You got to allow this guy not to take hits.
And more than that, you also need to get another receiver who's going to play more than 4 games. I like Will Fuller. He's a dynamic receiver.
I like Kute.
Do not bet on them. Yeah, exactly. Do not bet on them because neither one has stayed healthy. Kute, I'd even bet on before Will Fuller. We've seen Will Fuller get hurt multiple times. It's like Sammy Watkins. It doesn't matter if you're not on the field, right? You can be the most talented guy in the NFL. How many times have people said this is a top 10 receiver that Buffalo's had?
Right.
Even with Kansas City, couldn't stay on the field consistently. It eventually comes back to haunt you. And I'm with you on that point.
And when he was on the field, he looked great, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
All right, we got to get back to the Chiefs. We'll get back to the Chiefs. Sean says Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills will do better this year. We gave him 1 game better last time. If you want to watch that, Sean, we do have an entire video on Buffalo. And by we, I mean me, because somebody decided he needed a day off. We did talk about Buffalo in our last episode. If you click the video tab, we got the whole long list of everything, Sean. So we go all the way through that. And Sharif says he's going to blow me up when the Texans get that ass, huh? Well, they still got... I hope they're not talking about me. I hope they're talking about Marcus Mariota in that sense. There's a potential for that. They have a good front 7. I'm not arguing they have a good front 7, but you lost to Blaine Gabbert. You lost to Blaine Gabbert last year. You let Kevin Byard throw the only touchdown in that game. And Deshaun Watson's the best quarterback to ever play in the game.
Ian's out there burning as well. He says I'm confused. Is Watson the quarterback of Tampa Bay? Oh wait, aren't those the 2? Aren't those 2 and 1 the same?
Well, he had a lot of interception problems, but the only difference is Deshaun Watson figured it out when he got to the pros. Jameis Winston did not.
True.
All right, we'll move forward here. We won't get not too bogged down,
Sean,
right?
no, I'm allowed to have days off.
No days off. Be like the Patriots. No days off, man. No days off. All right, we'll go forward here because we do have a couple other games we got to talk about. The Broncos on the road. Again, they played the Chiefs tough, but come on. You look at these rosters. I think they might play them tough here. They might run a little bit. The Chiefs are kind of scrambling. Maybe it takes a last-minute touchdown. Maybe it takes a last-minute defensive stop. But you can't tell me that the Broncos have what the Chiefs have on this roster.
No, they're going to play them tough. There's no doubt about it. That defense is still one of the better defenses in the league. But as of right now, in these last couple of years, the AFC West is Kansas City. There is no team, even including the Chargers, who saw a great improvement from last year. Kansas City still owns the West. Until that happens, I don't really see a lot of teams beating Kansas City in the same division.
Shortly after that, the Packers will be more of a challenge. I think the Packers might even keep things interesting if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, throwing the ball around. But you look at receiving weapons, I love Devontae Adams. I think he's an underrated wide receiver. He's like T.Y. Hilton that hasn't quite got the same level of respect that probably he deserves. But one guy doesn't beat the Chiefs. And that's going to be my point here a lot. You're not going to have one weapon and beat the Chiefs because eventually they're going to stack enough guys over there to take it away. I know maybe Eric Ebron has a good day today. Maybe we see Jack Doyle have a good day today. Maybe it's Marlon Mack. Wait, what am I talking about? We're talking about... I'm sorry, I went into Indianapolis there. Maybe... what am I even talking about? Maybe the Packers have a good day here.
Hey, welcome to Sports Around the Bar.
Sorry.
I'm Drew. This is Jake, I think. And
I think I might be an idiot. Also, the Packers, just because you have Devontae Adams, it's probably not enough to beat the Chiefs. Just like the Colts maybe don't have enough to beat the Chiefs.
I'm sorry. Oh, man.
We've been on too long. Sorry about that.
Hey, I've done it before, but I do it just
space.
because I'm an idiot. Anyway, Sharice said the Chiefs will be the AFC champions in the Super Bowl, man. I completely agree. I don't know who put the laughing face on you, but that is wrong.
Probably Ian.
Take that
and you know
off.
what? He's right.
Sharif also said...
It is Ian.
Thank
See, I'm
you,
good.
Sean. I appreciate it, man. Sharice says, when Watson goes Jedi... I'm going to let Sports Around the Bar universe know who's the best.
Well, we didn't say Deshaun Watson's bad, right?
No.
We're like, man, they got their quarterback of the future.
That
He's
never
good.
once came out of our
What
mouths.
did I say? They need to put a roster around him. And Seattle beat up on Russell Wilson and happens to have struggled their way through the other side of things, where now they have an offensive line. Now they're running the ball a little bit better. They've found a way to do it. But you can't consistently let your quarterback get hit like that and just say things are going to work out. And to me, the Houston Texans are almost on the same trajectory, where they want to be a little bit more of a gritty team. They want to play some defense. But you got to solve the offensive line problems. You just have to do it.
I'm right there with you. And Sharif, I get what you're saying, that they could have hiccups in the division. You got to remember, this is a Kansas City Chiefs going into year 5 winning the AFC West division. This is a team that has dominated their division. I mean, it's the truth. It's just what it is. The problem is with Kansas City is we fall in the playoffs. But as far as division games go, we dominate them, man. So until it proves me anything different, I got to disagree with you completely.
Now, Sharif, you're good, man. Again, I just went on a rant about Indianapolis. I'm not even sure where that came from. We all get off track. That's all I can say. We all get off track. That was embarrassing. We'll move forward.
So far, through
They're
week
undefeated.
1 through 8, they are undefeated. Week 9, they had the Vikings, another quote-unquote playoff team at home.
And then it's the same. Titans on the road, a team that's a playoff, hopeful. And then you get the Chargers after that. 3, again, tough games after they started the season. Relatively easy when you talk about Jaguars, Raiders, Lions.
Yeah, no doubt about it. With the Vikings, this is a team that scares me. When you go to the Packers and then the Vikings, it's going to be tough. This is a scary stretch between, and I don't want to knock the Broncos down off of this, but from week 8 to week 11, this is a scary stretch of good teams, and these are playoff teams or playoff hopeful teams. I know the Titans are a little bit further from the other pack, but we won't sit there and say too much about
Further
that.
than the Vikings, who finished with a better record?
No. Anyways,
Multiple games. Who finished better than the Packers?
who are you talking about? The
The
Colts?
Titans. Yeah, maybe. They also did.
No, I think this is a scary stretch, and I think we're actually going to find our first loss here in the Sports Around the Bar preview with the 2019 Chiefs.
It's not with the Titans, though. It's with the Chargers,
Correct.
which hurts me. In Mexico City, that's a toss-up game. Anytime both teams have to travel that far, it's always tough. You're out of your rhythm. It's not even a casual away game because everything is different culturally.
Right.
It's like going to London. I think that's going to be their first loss as well, even though I want to say the Titans here in Nashville stand a chance. Until I see something out of our quarterbacks, maybe Ryan Tannehill looks like he's great because he's playing by week 10 and Marcus is hurt. Maybe then the Titans have more of a chance, but right now, I got to give it to you. Just like I said with the Ravens, the defenses are only holding out so long against this team.
Yeah.
You don't shut down the Chiefs. You keep them in check, and then you outshoot them, and that's how you beat the Chiefs. The problem is, there's only a couple teams in the NFL that can do that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And with the Chargers in Week 11 playing in Mexico City, by the way, it's not L.A., Sharif. It's in Mexico City. The fact that they play in L.A., they're going to have a lot of fans down in Mexico. There's no doubt about it. Mexicans love California. They love that area. I can't blame them. It's a beautiful state. And they have a lot of fans down in Mexico. I think that this is definitely be a way more away game for Kansas City than it would be in LA.
And I agree. I'm kind of with Ian here. He says they're 3-1 in the division with a tie with LA. They lose the one in LA. That is the Mexico City game.
I'm sorry, it wasn't Sharif. It was Ian. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, I got you. That is the Mexico City game. The Chargers do not get to play that game at home. It counts as their home game, and they have to go all the way out to Mexico City. Sucks for them. I think the same thing happened when they play the Titans, but it's because they're not selling tickets. And that's what it boils down to. The NFL wants to sell as many tickets as possible. If you're not selling out your stadium, they're going to send you off across the map to somewhere where they are going to sell those tickets.
Lost Chiefs is what Sharif says. And Sean, dude, we appreciate all your love, man. I'm glad you enjoyed this show. Just keep on commenting and liking our stuff, man. We appreciate it greatly.
And Sharif says he's taking the Titans at plus 5.5 against the Browns in Week 1. I appreciate that, Sharif. I think, again, continuity. I'd take the pick'em. I would. I put the money on the Titans and the pick'em. I think they're going to beat the Browns Week 1, who are trying to find themselves. But we're not talking about the Titans.
All right, Week 9, we see it as a win against the Vikings. And Week 10 in Nashville, we also see it as a win. Do you want to talk about Week 10 at all? We'll be there at that game.
We got to shoot out. We got to have some offensive. When I say we, I mean the Titans. They need to have some sort of offensive production if they're going to keep up with the Chiefs. Last year wasn't good enough, and that's what it boils down to. You can't be the 28th offense and try to square up with the Chiefs. I don't care how good the defense is. You can take the Bears, Titans, Ravens, and any other good defense you want to put up there, take the best players off those squads, put them against this Chiefs team. They're still going to drop 20-some points against you. You have to keep up in that sense. I think the Titans have the weapons to do it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know necessarily that they have the strong enough quarterback play to keep up with a team like the Chiefs. That hurt my soul.
We do in Week 11 see that being a loss for the Kansas City. That's the first loss they found themselves into. At Week 12, we finally get a bye. This is a perfect time for a playoff-bound team to get a bye, to get healthy. And to be honest with you, the last 5 games don't get any easier for Kansas City, even though they start Week 3 or 13 with the Raiders in Kansas City.
Well, it gets a little easier there. I think the Raiders are still that team that it sucks to me that this wasn't a Week 13 bye somehow, and they didn't get to prepare for the Patriots. Or the Patriots didn't play in Week 12. Because if you could have played the Patriots coming off the bye week, even on the road, I'd say I'd go with the Chiefs. But the Raiders shouldn't be a problem coming off the bye week. Then you got to go play the Patriots after that on the road in Foxborough in that winter weather where everyone's fired up. The Patriots have probably found their stride. This is a loss. This is loss number 2 here for the Chiefs. They're going to lose to the Patriots in Foxborough. This is why home field advantage is so important. We saw one of the best AFC Championship games. I know it broke your heart, Drew, but it was still a great game.
I lost my voice.
I know. You had to take a shot after the thing because you were so devastated. Still a great game. We saw in Kansas City, now on the road against an experienced quarterback like Tom Brady and this Patriots team that's been around the block. They know how to win. I got to go loss here too. Maybe it's upsetting. Maybe we see the Patriots kind of make some inroads on this lead that the Chiefs have on them in the division or in the conference. But the Patriots have to win this game if they're going to be the first seed, if they're going to be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, if this was anything from Week 6 and up, or even Week 8 and up, I'd sit there and tell you that Kansas City is going to beat the Patriots. But we all know that the Patriots, when it comes late into the season, this is when they start getting their stride. This is when the defense starts cohesing together and becoming a good defense under Belichick's scheme. We definitely see it as a loss. And Week 15 and 16 and 17, like I said, aren't any easier. Week 15 in Kansas City, they get the Broncos, who always seems to play them real tough. Week 16, they go on the road into Chicago. Talk about a cold game in Chicago. And then Week 17, we get the Chargers probably trying to win the division against the Chargers in Week 17 in Kansas City.
Now, going back to the New England game, Ian says the NFL will make sure New England wins. Do you see a little bit of bias in that? You're not the first team to say that they feel like the Patriots get the edge there. Do we see the bias there again?
Well, I can sit there and tell you.
In Foxborough? I'm going to say yeah. I mean, that's a tough place to play when you got those fans yelling at you and you're a ref.
And when I watched the NFC or the AFC Championship game last year, and I saw the interception Tom Brady threw, which was a terrible throw, and he deserved to be picked off, and I saw the flag, I literally sat there and said, the NFL is stopping the Chiefs from going into the Super Bowl and allowing the Patriots to get there.
But then you saw the play.
But then I saw the play, and I was like, oh, okay. D Ford's an idiot. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
He was 3 yards past the ball, a line of scrimmage. I mean...
And if I can get on my soapbox, so is Andy Reid for trying to defend this situation, saying, oh, they should have just given us a warning saying he was offsides. The dude was like 3 miles offsides.
Dude, he was so far off.
He was so far off, it was like, there's no reason the ref shouldn't have thrown the flag. It probably should have been four plays ago. Were they saving it? Who knows? Maybe. Maybe it was one of those situations they were waiting for the Patriots to really pay off for it. I don't believe in all the conspiracy theories with that, but I think when you look at things, it's just an indefensible position. He was so far off, even if you're Andy Reid, you had to be like, yeah, we got to do better. But that's just all there is.
There's plenty of other plays in there that you could have said that pushed the Chiefs and the Raiders, or the Chiefs and the Patriots game to be a lot closer than it should have. But I'm with you, Ian. I know why you say that, but as far as that one play goes, Kansas City made a mistake, but I get what you're saying, dude. I really do. Sharif and Frank both say this is going to be a loss for Kansas City in Chicago. We actually see it as a win.
I think a lot of it comes down to Chicago's schedule. They play a lot of tough teams towards the end. I think them getting the Chiefs at this point, even though it's at home, and they upset a team like the Rams last year, it's going to be a tough win for them. Even with kind of the offensive progress they've made over the past year, I think the Bears are still that half step behind the Chiefs. If this is a playoff game and you've got a little bit more time to prepare, or it's more important, I think maybe the Bears put up a little bit more of a fight, but they have a tough schedule closing things out. I think when you look at the Chiefs coming off of the Broncos, maybe the Bears are a little more manageable than if they were coming off a team like the Patriots and then Bears and then Eagles or something difficult like that. I think that Broncos game might be a little bit of the difference here. Plus, I love the Bears. I think they're a great team. I think that if you look at Kansas City and what they've tried to do in this defensive line, they're going to be tougher up front than they were last season. They're going to have to find some answers with Mitch Trubisky. Do I see Mitch Trubisky outshooting Patrick Mahomes over the course of a game? Probably not. That being said, this might be the game of the week.
9 out of 10 teams no. Or 9 out of 10 games no. You don't see Trubisky matching up Patrick Mahomes. But you got to remember, these coaches know each other. The Nagy is off the Coach Reid's coaching tree. This is teams that are very familiar with each other, familiar with the scheme, and rarely does a protege beat the master. I mean, that is an issue. Do I give the Bears the edge on the defense? Absolutely. That's one of the best defenses in the league, period.
Well, you have to. They were first, and the Chiefs were last.
But one of the best offenses is for sure Kansas City, if not the best offense.
It's offense versus defense. Best defense versus best offense.
And then
if you look at the right metric.
Again, I will mention it one more time. We did that twice last year and won both games.
Absolutely. All right. Going through a couple of these comments here. Sean wants to know how many years we've been on the air. We started in 2018 before the season started back in February? April was the first show. We started before that. Doesn't matter. We've been on for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. We appreciate you guys for sticking around with us through this vast and wonderful journey that we've been on. Also, going forward here.
Man, your math is terrible.
That's like a year and a half. 18, a year.
We're not going to talk about it. It doesn't matter.
All right, cool. Going through here, Ian's with you. He says KC is faster than Chicago, and at that point in the season, it's going to be 14-13 Kansas City. I think it'll be close, too. It's probably going to be ugly, but I think it's probably somewhere around 22-18 because Chicago may come up a little bit short on offense, shorter than they need to if they're going to win this game.
In Week 17 in home, they face the Chargers, and we also see that as a win, just because we believe that the Chargers at some point in time will fall on their face like they've done so many years, year in and year out. I'm trying not to laugh.
It's like 18 months. Do the math. All right, we'll go into this Chargers game here.
You said 2 years. Never mind.
I don't know what I said. I also said the Colts were going to give their players to the Packers.
We're almost at 2 hours into this show, and I ran out of beer.
I know. That's what it is. I'm blaming the beer, too. I've been out for a while. Going to the Chargers here, they're going to beat them. I don't think these are two teams that are going to split again. And even though last year when they beat them, Week 16 that they wound up beating them in San Diego, and Phillip Rivers had that bad start, and I was like, here we go. The Chiefs are going to sweep them, and it's about to not be fun to watch the rest of this year. Chargers don't have it in them to sweep this team. They won the first matchup, even in Mexico City. I don't see them beating Kansas City twice, especially Week 17 at home. Maybe you have a team like the Patriots nipping at your heels, trying to take that home field advantage away from you. They're going to know how important that is.
The hype going in the playoffs, the fans are going to be behind this team. It's going to be
especially
a difficult place
if they
to play.
lose in Foxborough, they're going to know how important it is to play that playoff game in Arrowhead. I think they're going to go beat a team like the Chargers here.
Look how great my wife is.
Awesome. We needed that. Thank you so much. You are perfect. Let's talk about where we see the Chiefs finishing. Because 14-2 is a little high, right? 14-2. You had to talk me into it. I said this is a 13-3 team at best. I'm not a guy that likes giving away 14, 15 wins because it's the NFL and anything can happen on any given Sunday. To me, this is a little bit of final thoughts here, but 14 wins, we agreed they're the best team in football. Is that too high? Obviously not, because you said they're going to get it.
No, I don't think it's too high. I think it's very reasonable. I'm going to go back to what I've said since the very beginning is when you're sitting at the 31st defense and you completely reset your defense, there's not a lot much lower than you can go. But I believe in Steve Spagnuolo. I believe in the defense that he's doing. I believe in these players that they're bringing in. When we lost D Ford, we lost Justin Houston, and we lost Eric Berry, I'm sitting there going, oh man, how are they going to fix this? But it seems like with the Frank Clark addition, with the Tyrann Mathieu addition, and this draft with Saunders and Thornhill, I get a little bit of excitement behind this because at some point in time, even if they start out really bad, something's got to turn around and make this team better. If everyone can remember, Steve Spagnuolo made his head coaching career because of his defensive scheming and what he did as a defensive coordinator for the Eagles. And I believe, it was the Giants he head coached. He was the head coach, right? I can't remember. But this guy has made his career on defensive side of the ball. I think the change of atmosphere makes this defense a little bit better. If it's the offense that takes a step back, I think it's okay that the offense takes a step back. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't throw 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, that's okay because more than likely he's going to throw 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, yeah. Which is still going to make him close to being the MVP race of this NFL league. This is huge for this team to get better on the defense, and it seems like they're making all the right strides. So when we talk about a 14-2 record going into 2019 season, I don't think it's that far off. Now, do the wins and losses come somewhere else? It's a possibility. It seemed like the Chiefs in regular season usually had the Patriots.
Yeah, they're going to get a big fat L against Tennessee. I think everyone knows that.
Right,
so.
And then you got teams. I'm agreeing with you. It's definitely a good possibility, and it seems like
it's not.
And it seems like Chicago.
Have you seen us play offense? It's not.
Where you play in Chicago, it's going to be another tough team to play against. But this team is not going 16-0. But I don't see their loss going down to 5 or 4 losses. I think this is a lot better team than a lot of other people give it credit for because, and there's a lot of people that are definitely high on this bandwagon as well. But there's a lot of haters out there going, look how terrible this defense is. Patrick Mahomes sophomore slump. It's going to make a difference here. That stuff happens. Right. But I think, I don't know, I'm a homer, but I think this team has every right to be better than what they were last year.
Now, Sharif is with you. He's saying KC will be the number 1 seed at 12-4, though, maybe a couple games behind. See, I think that's a little more reasonable. It's just tough winning that many games in the NFL. There's a reason we say any given Sunday. It could be the Raiders have the game of the year because this is their Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's the Chiefs. They're coming in here, top team in the AFC. Let's show these guys. It could be anything. It could be even a game like last year where the Chargers, it doesn't matter how far behind they get. They find a way to drag themselves to a win. I think 14-2 is a little high, but we've seen 14-win teams before.
Yeah.
I will say that. I like this team. We've both agreed they might be the best in football. Before that, we had the Saints at 13-3, and that was it. So I think when you look at things, even as tough as the schedule looks on the back half, they have their breaks in there. They play teams like the Broncos. They play teams like the Raiders that maybe are not quite as taxing as going in some of these teams playing like Eagles, Bears, Vikings, Packers back to back to back to back. They don't have that long stretch of games. I'm like, man, there's no break in there. And not that you can take any game off, but when you play 3 to 4 to 5 playoff caliber teams, that does eventually wear you down. And it absolutely does. Going into it, Ian says he sees them 12-4 tie with LA, but this time the Chargers win the division with the tiebreaker. Potentially, the Chargers. Let's not pretend like they weren't close to it. But I think the Chargers are fool's gold. I don't think they have the mentality it takes. Everyone kind of dissed me when I said that last year, and then they kind of got like absolutely destroyed by a Patriots team that has been there and done that before. I think this is one of those teams that will do well this year, but they're going to fool everybody.
They're going to sign Gordon.
Even if they had him last year, and they still came up short.
I know, but you can't let him walk. Can't trade him.
You shouldn't. I like Austin Eckler, but come on.
No, he's nowhere near what Gordon is. You need to sign that guy if you want to be remotely. If you lose him, it's exactly like when the Kansas City lost Hunt in the sense of this team has taken a step back and won't be as good as it was prior to that. You need a complete offseason to fix it. Bring Gordon in. He has to be your running back for this LA Chargers team to remotely make a run deep in the playoffs.
Now, Ian's saying the Raiders couldn't beat a practice squad, and Sean's saying that he's absolutely right about that. Guys, this happens in the NFL all the time. Believe me, I'm a Titans fan. I'm usually the wrong end of these things. But bad teams step up because this is their Super Bowl. It's the best team they're ever going to play. They're going to play for the year, and they just want to prove a point that, hey, I deserve to be here. Sometimes these teams overlook them.
Yeah.
Kansas City's not beyond that. I mean, that was like almost all of last year where they got way out in front of people, and they were like, cruise control. We're good. No need to worry about this. And then we saw 35-3 turn into 35-28 or 41-35. I mean, we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs take their foot off the gas.
Andy Reid
Potentially they do
syndrome.
that in the wrong game. Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly what it is.
Absolutely. But you guys are right. They are not a great team on paper, but not great teams in the NFL can win games, even against the best ones.
Well, you got any final thoughts, or was that your final thought? I do,
and I want to go to Ian's point here, saying the Chargers are making the Rams look bad at training camp. It's training camp. Don't believe what you hear. Don't even trust us. Training camp is literally all hype. You're going to get these beat writers out there that this is their time to shine, so it's going to be this.
You trust us.
Okay, trust us, but trust nobody else. Training camp is always a really, really, really tough thing to bet on. Yeah, they have a good start to it, but this is like week -3. Okay, where are these teams going to be at when they have 6 or 8 weeks of working together and playing together? Do you see that being the case? I going to my Chargers point when I said they were fool's gold, and I think that might be his point here. They barely beat Jeff Driscoll and the Bengals. They struggled with the kid that came off the street for the 49ers, Nick something or other.
Mullins, maybe?
Nick Mullins coming off the street with the 49ers. They struggled with some bad teams last year. And I know that they beat the Ravens, and that was a huge accomplishment, and then they got dismantled in the playoffs. To me, the Chargers are that second tier worth of team that don't have the ability to win a Super Bowl. They have a great roster on paper, but you don't play the game on paper.
Yeah. I want to get back to the training camp thing.
And we appreciate you trusting us, Ian.
One of the things that I just want to get a point across about it is when you talk about beat writers, what they're trying to do is make a career in saying something off the line and hopefully get right. They want
to hit a home run.
When you go into training camp, players are going to look good. And what makes the difference between an NFL coach and a high school coach or a college coach is that keen eye of knowing what the difference is between a player playing in pads versus playing in shorts with his teammates. You want to
when everything's scripted.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You want to see that above and beyond every time. You want to see that guy that gets in there early in the morning is late to leave. That stuff that you see that's so cliche to say is one of the most important things that these coaches look at. When they sit there and they have these 90-man rosters, and I have no idea what that is. When they have a 90-man roster and they're sitting there cutting down to 70 and then all of a sudden to 53, they're cutting players that they want to sign for their organization. A lot of these players, they want to make a difference. I have no idea what that is, but that's deafening.
Well, we'll wrap it up because it's annoying the hell out of me.
Stopped.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
But my point across this is a lot of players look really good. But at some point in time, these players are going to get cut that weren't great. And that's what makes an NFL coach an NFL coach. And, you can sit there and say that the Chargers are beating the Rams or whatever, or you can sit there and say that Damian Williams doesn't look good at running back, but when they put those pads on, that's when you see the difference. And good coaches can spot that out during training camp.
Absolutely. Don't put too much stock in anything you hear until the season starts. That's all I can say. Yeah, fantasy-wise, sometimes you got to bet on guys. Sometimes you want to take those bottom-round picks. Don't bet on anything you hear in training camp because most of this stuff is scripted and most of it's run with a certain result in mind. You want your quarterback to get some confidence, so you're going to call some weird defenses and you're going to let him throw it around. You want the defense to step up and match up against these receivers really well because that's what you're trying to build. Don't trust anything you hear in training camp. Always, always, always do not trust what you hear. It's always fake. That's all I can say. Not always. 80% of the time, it's wrong 100% of the time.
Well, if I remember correctly, it was like the Patriots lost every preseason game, and then that was the year they went and won
No, they lost one preseason game, and I know what you're talking about. The year they went perfect, they lost to one team outside of the Giants in the Super Bowl. Do you know who it was?
Oh my God! Just stop.
It's the Tennessee Titans.
It wasn't
Week 3 of the preseason, baby.
There was a team that lost all 4 preseason games and had a great year afterwards, and might have been Kansas City. I don't remember now. I honestly don't.
Yeah, no, what you're talking about, Titans and Giants, only team to beat them that year. It just happened to be the preseason of the Titans where nothing mattered. All right.
Do you have like a trophy at your house about that?
I do, yeah. Only team. Well, everyone's like the Giants, the only team that beat the Patriots in that season. Not true. Okay, the season's 20 games long, 20 weeks long. All right, guys, we got to get out of here. It was a great show.
It was.
Obviously, it was fun. Again, maybe I'm not quite as optimistic about the Chiefs as Drew is, but I do give him credit. This is probably the best football team in the game from week 1. That can change from week 2 when somebody gets hurt. But right now, I got to give them the edge, 14-2. It's a possibility.
Guys, I want to thank you again for all the likes, comments, and shares. It means the world to us. Remember to do that. I know it sounds so cliche for me to say it over and over again, but I'm telling you, it helps us out tremendously. We are in the process of making Sports Around the Bar so much bigger than what it is. I promise you apparel is coming. I promise you we got fantasy football. We got so many things we want to do and bring you guys involved with. It means the world to us when you do the likes, comments, and shares. It creates so much more opportunities for us. And I do want to give a special thanks out to everyone that did comment. James, Ian, Martavius, Kenny, Bobby, Frank, Sean, John with his negative comment, Steven, Lewis, and Sharif. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much.
Especially thank you to Frank. I know you've been here for a long time. Ian, Sharif, Sean. I know you guys have been sticking around for the long haul. I want to give you guys an even specialer thanks because I know you guys have been here from close to the beginning and you stuck with us this hour and a half. It's been
2 hours.
Hour and 45, not quite. We're going to wrap it up.
My math
Hour
sucks.
and 52 is what it's been. We appreciate each and every one of you guys, but especially the guys that have been in with the long haul. You're like an A+ in a field full of A's, man. You guys are awesome. We appreciate that. We're going to be back on Wednesday to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Like promised, we're going to have a special guest with us. We hope to see you there. Crap all over him for me because this guy loves the Cowboys. Okay? And don't make me the bad guy. We'll be back on Wednesday. We hope to see you there. So for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake, your bartender. This is Drew. Again, thank you guys so much. We appreciate the likes, the shares, the comments, especially those shares, but we appreciate all of them. Guys, we can't wait to see you then.
See ya.
That's all you got to say?